Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Religious customers demand I pray with them before they eat and complain when I decline. Many moons ago, I waitressed at a restaurant near several churches. This was way before lockdown. My first table one day was fresh from church. They were about to pray when I walked up. Seeing this, I stepped back to let them finish. The wife, who I'll call Karen, waves me towards the table. I hold up a hand, indicating no thanks. This happened often. Most of the time, they just went about their business. Karen, "We're going to pray. Join us." I suppose this is where I should say I don't do the religion thing. I don't mind if they do it around me, but I'm not comfortable joining in. Me, "No thank you. I'll come back when you're done." I go to leave. Karen, "It's okay. We won't tell your boss." She laughs. Me, "Boss? No, I'm just very busy. I'll go refill some drinks," and Karen interrupts me. "There is nothing more important than God." Me, "Okay, I'll be back." Karen, "I'm asking you to pray with my family. Are you really rejecting this one-of-a-kind offer?" Me, thinking, what? "Thank you, but I have to politely decline." Karen's husband, I'll call him Jerk. "Excuse me, what did you say?" Me, "I am not comfortable doing that, so I'm declining your offer. That is not to say you cannot do it yourselves. Please take your time. I'll go refill some drinks and be back. No rush." Jerk, loudly, "I want the manager. I don't want you waiting on us either." I said okay and walked away quickly. I found the manager and explained the situation. The manager goes to the table and tells them it is not required for servers to pray with customers and he would not force me to do it. If they wanted another server, they could have one. Jerk, "You're just as bad as she is. All of you here working instead of going to church like you should be. It's a shame. It's disgusting." Manager, "Sir, which would you rather have? The rest of us sitting beside you in a pew, or here, serving you iced tea and fried chicken steak? We can only do one." Jerk sputters, "Well, it's not up to me." Manager, "A new server will be with you momentarily." Karen, "What about her?" She points to me. My manager walks away from the table without reply. They get up and huff out. Next Sunday, guess who was right back there again and in my section? Karen, "We asked for you today because we're going to pray for you while you work." I ignore the comment and take their drink order. I can hear them praying loudly, something about helping me find my way to Christ. The meal goes fine, no issues, but when they leave, I see they left me a big fat 0 in terms of tip. Instead, they left me literature on their church. Next weekend, they request me again. I talked to the server next to me and swapped tables because I wouldn't serve them again. They stopped me when I was walking by and questioned why I wasn't waiting on them when they had asked for me specifically. Me, "I figured after all the problems last time I waited on you, you'd for sure want another server." Karen, "Problems?" They all look confused. Me, "Yeah, I figured since you didn't tip me, I did something wrong. I wouldn't want to do that to you again." Insert sarcasm here. Then I turned and walked away. Jerk husband was saying something to me, and I totally ignored him. That was the last time I saw them. I think I offended them enough that they refused to come back. Thank their God. Has anyone ever treated you differently because you weren't the same religion as them? Please let us know. I look down on anyone who's not a member of the Church of Karen. All hail the Ree. Entitled Mom gets banned from the theme park for a huge tantrum. Hi everyone. I've been dying to post this story from my time working at a theme park forever now, and I finally have enough karma to do so. Hope you guys enjoy. A little backstory. I worked at a theme park on the events team. We have events around seasonal periods, and they're always themed. At almost every event, we have a competition build, a scavenger hunt, and other things for kids to do while they're in the park besides rides. This particular event was in January of 2018, and I was working the competition build. The way our competition build works is these kids get a Lego base plate to build everything on. The two rules we have is that nothing can hang off the edge of the base plate and the build can't be taller than a foot. This is what our entitled mom uses as her leverage. I had just returned from lunch and I saw that somebody had built an amazing build. It was a dragon that had a moving tail, arms, and a head. It had lots of detail and followed the theme. It was definitely going to win. We were only open for about another hour and we didn't think anybody else could build something good enough in that time frame. Enter our entitled mom. She had 2 small kids who started building at our competition. Like we normally do, we were talking to the kids and the mom trying to give them a great experience. The dad jokingly said to us, "You know when you see builds like that, the dragon, it's like why even try? But hey, if the kids are having fun, so be it." Entitled mom finally sees the dragon build. "Oh wow, he must have brought pieces from home." Me, "Actually, he used all the pieces we have on the table." Entitled mom then proceeded to look at the dragon very intensely. When I see her reaching out to touch it, I stop her. Me, "Please don't touch other people's builds, ma'am. We don't want them to break."
"I'm not touching, just looking."
I keep watching her just to make sure she doesn't do anything else, but she then pulls out her phone and takes pictures of the entire build. After taking the pictures, she walks over to her sons. Entitled mom,
"Don't worry, boys. That build is disqualified anyways. Its pieces hang over the edge."
The piece she's referring to is the moving tail. When you fold the tail, it didn't hang over the edge, but when you unfolded it, it would hang over the edge. When she took her pictures, she unfolded the tail. My coworker folded the tail back up and moved the dragon build to the back of the table so she couldn't reach it. After a few minutes, entitled mom comes over to us and demands we find the pieces that the kid used when he built the dragon. Our Lego pieces that we use for competition builds are a mix of hundreds of Lego kits. There is absolutely no guarantee of any type of pieces. The piece she was referring to looked like an elephant tusk. Entitled mom,
"Find my babies these pieces now. They need them."
Me, "I will try my best, ma'am, but those small pieces normally fall to the bottom of our bins, and there's no guarantee we have any more."
"I don't care. Find them. We want to use them."
Me and my coworker spent the next few minutes digging through these large gray tote bins filled with thousands of Lego pieces just to try and find a tiny piece that is smaller than a pencil eraser. We found some pretty cool pieces that we tried to give to the kids. Me, "Hey guys, we couldn't find the pieces you wanted, but we found these super cool ones. Do you want to use these?" Entitled kid 1.
"No, we want the ones that are on the dragon."
Entitled kid 2.
"Yeah, it's not fair he brought his own pieces from home."
Entitled mom,
"You're making my babies upset. Since we can't use the pieces we brought from home, can we use the pieces from inside?"
We were outside a building that had more Legos inside. Now, the pieces that were inside were thick, dirty bricks, no specialty pieces. Plus, they didn't belong to my department. Me, "Sorry ma'am, those pieces don't belong to the events team. We can't use those. Plus, none of those bricks are the type of pieces you would want either."
"This is so unfair. My babies aren't gonna win, and it's all your fault."
After this, I kind of shut down. I walked away to talk to some other kids who weren't little brats. We had about 15 minutes before we were going to close the competition. During this time, my boss came to help us start closing. When she arrived, I let her know about our entitled mom. Now, I love my boss. I have worked with her for a very long time. She's the main reason why I haven't quit yet. My boss had an issue with entitled parents, especially parents that put other kids down to bring their kid up. After I let my boss know that she had been touching the dragon build, she stood in front of the table and blocked the dragon build. Again, entitled mom decided to try and touch the build. Boss, "Please don't touch other people's builds." Entitled mom,
"I'm not. I'm just looking."
"Did you know this build is disqualified?" Boss, "Even if it was, we don't like to tell kids that their build was disqualified and break their hearts." Entitled mom did not like this. She went back to taking pictures, but not of the build, but she started taking pictures of us. My boss, being very sarcastic, told her to make sure she gets her good side. Me and my coworker jokingly posed while she took pictures of us. The time hit for us to close, and instead of entitled mom leaving like the other families did, she sat there and watched us.
"When do they come out and judge them?"
Boss, "You will be notified by email only if you win." Normally when we close, we put away all the Legos and take apart all the builds on the table after selecting a winner. Since entitled mom wanted to sit there and watch us, we had to carry this giant table with all the builds on it inside the building and into an employee-only room just so we can take them apart. We kept going outside to continue cleaning up, and entitled mom kept watching us. She followed us around and videotaped everything. I assume her husband went somewhere with her kids because they were gone. After we moved everything inside, We took pictures of the dragon and of her brat's builds. My boss called security and let them know about her stalking us. She also contacted guest services and let them know of her behavior so that she couldn't go up there and get free stuff. While we were taking apart the builds, guest services radioed us. They already knew the lady we were talking about by name. They said she had caused several issues in the park in the years prior. She was an annual pass holder, and her behavior today put more points against her annual pass, and she was a half a point away from being banned. After all the builds were taken apart, we decided to pull the dragon registration form as the winner. My boss looked at the slip and laughed. "Boss, the builder of the dragon has already won a competition build, so he can't win again." The sad thing is, Entitled Mom's kids built some really cute stuff, and had Entitled Mom not acted the way she did, her kids would have won. As of now, 2021, I no longer work at this theme park, but the Entitled Mom has been permanently banned due to her behavior. Speaking of theme parks, what's your favorite theme park in the whole world? Please let us know. I'd do anything to go to Disneyland right now. Am I the jerk for lashing out after my husband ruined the food I prepared for our guests? Me, female 26, and my husband, male 33, Mike, have been married for a year now. He doesn't cook. He's bad at it. His cooking is worse, despite learning from books, YouTube videos, me teaching him. It just never works. Every time he steps a foot into the kitchen, it turns into a mess. I don't know how. He doesn't know how. Maybe because he's constantly busy with work, police officer, and is used to fast food. But he's good at other things, so we agreed that I handle cooking, he handles chores. Everything was going well. However, recently, he's been getting involved in my cooking, basically making comments about what ingredients I should not add, and I try to take it under consideration, but only if he's being reasonable. Lately, he's been waiting for when I prepare dinner or lunch, then sneaks in and adds extra salt/pepper or spices or other ingredients that completely ruin the meal. First, it was a mystery to me, had me questioning myself, why I added too much salt or spices. He admitted he was the one adding extra ingredients and messing up my cooking. The meals are no longer eatable. I've told him to not try to get involved in something he doesn't have experience with. I've basically been eating out for a week now because of him. Last night, we had my family visiting. I took the entire day preparing meals. He helped out by going to the grocery stores. I noticed he bought stuff from the grocery store that I wasn't allowed to see. I figure probably some snacks. As we were about to eat dinner, my mom and dad suddenly looked grossed out and said they couldn't eat because the food had too much salt in it. I was confused and I asked them to try another dish which was too spicy for them to eat. My dad had an upset stomach and he almost threw up. He has high blood pressure and salt isn't good for him. Mike kept acting confused. My mom and dad couldn't eat anything I made. I knew Mike had done something with it. My parents left and I felt ashamed. I asked Mike, then I blew up after he admitted he went behind my back to add ingredients that he thought were gonna make my food better. I lashed out at him, told him he ruined my work after spending hours and made my parents feel uncomfortable, adding too much salt, knowing my dad has high blood pressure. He argued that he was just trying to help and thought the food would be better, so I shouldn't yell at him. And my parents didn't say anything, so it wasn't that bad. I told him he shouldn't have done this, but he refused to acknowledge he did anything wrong, then went out to meet his friends for dinner. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Sometimes we need to focus on our strengths. For people like Mike, that means stay out of the kitchen. Company requires using our airline miles for work trips? Another fun story of an obnoxious boss. As I've mentioned in other posts, I used to travel a lot for business, between 30 and 35 weeks a year. Our boss was a frequent traveler as well, and taught us the tricks of the trade for accumulating frequent flyer miles, and especially status, a really great perk. Eventually, he retired and sold the company to New Boss. New Boss overheard that I had over 500,000 frequent flyer miles with my airline, not credit card points, and said he should implement a new policy that we had to use our personal frequent flyer miles for our business travel since the company had paid for our trips. That weekend, my wife and I sat down and booked weekend trips all over the country over the next year. Boston for clam chowder? Check. New York City for a Broadway show? Check. Garlic Fest in Gilroy, California? A real and delicious thing, by the way. Check. By Monday morning, my airline frequent flyer miles account was down to about 15,000 miles. Later that week, it was time to book a trip, and he said I had to use frequent flyer miles. I brought up my account and showed him I didn't have enough miles. He asked where they went, and when I said I had booked some trips, he demanded I redeposit the miles. I pointed out there was a $150 charge per person and that since it wasn't policy, I wasn't going to pay it. Upset, he announced going forward we needed approval for personal use of our personal frequent flyer miles. Okay, boss, you bet. My next step was to spread my flights over any and every airline I could find to prevent accumulating the 20,000 miles required to redeem a free ticket. I was on United, Frontier, American, Delta, Northwest, Continental, US Air, Southwest, etc. At one point, I think I booked a trip on the Mrs. Grace L. Ferguson airline and Storm Door Company. He eventually figured out what I was up to, and he lost what little patience remained for me. Then the following, paraphrased, took place. Boss, I suppose you think you're a smart guy. Me, no, I know I'm a smart guy. Boss, don't get cute. Me, no, I'm smart. Cute is just a bonus. Look, I see my wife about 10 days a month. I live out of a suitcase. I know the aircraft evacuation speech by heart. Most of my meals are handed to me through a window. And thanks to my willingness to do this, you make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you please just let me keep the only perk I get from all this? Boss thought about it for a bit, grunted, fine, keep your miles, and walked away. Edited to clarify that these were airline frequent flyer miles, not credit card points. Sorry about the confusion. The day a tour group of 50 people dropped in unannounced. Seems it was the tour guide that truly messed up, but the guests were the ones literally crying. It was bizarre. So back in the days, I worked in a small bar somewhere in Europe. I would always man the bar and kitchen solo as the place was basically dead. Around 4 people during the day, 10 to 15 at night, and the menu basically existed out of 3 sandwiches and french fries in case you got the drunk munchies. This specific day, I had 3 regulars at the bar and was chatting away while serving them some coffee when I saw a crowd, around 50 people, stop in front of the bar and a guy pointing to the door. Uh-oh, it was 1 p.m., so high chances they were expecting food. I could manage a bar of 50 people easily with drinks, but combined with food? No way. I excused myself to my guests and dashed into the kitchen while calling my boss that they either had to come in right now to help me or I would send them away if they expected food. Seeing dollar signs to pay the many outstanding bills, the place was going under. My boss told me he'd come right away while I started greeting the crowd. After they were seated, literally piled on top of one another as we didn't have enough seating space, I pulled aside the tour guide and asked if they were here for just a drink. Nope. Drinks, full menu, and everyone would pay separately. Oh dear Lord. I informed him that I was alone and I had support on the way, but to please inform everyone that they should be patient as we are not a fancy restaurant or anything and only had a small fryer, but we would try to make the best of it. I started going around asking for drink orders and people were already starting to scream to me that they wanted food now and giving me food orders while I was trying to manage a 50-person hungry crowd solo. I almost ripped my own teeth out in frustration right at that second, but kept on smiling. Luckily, then my boss came running in and started running the kitchen like a pro, and we managed to get out for 50 people with zero prep within 30 minutes. I had written down where people were sitting and gave them their orders according to the chart I made. Honestly, it was chaos, but I tried and ran as hard as I could while still smiling. Apparently, a table who had screamed their order at me while I was taking other people's drinks got their food not as first, but when I came out during my 3rd food plate run, they literally started crying. I was so shocked. The entire crowd was American, and every single time I meet an American nowadays, my mind goes back to that moment. Also, not a single person left a tip while I was working below minimum wage. Guess they thought tips are non-existent in every single European country. I get the service was not perfect, but no one can be blind enough to see this kind of situation for what it is, right? In the end, my boss fought the tour guide for being a jerk, and that was nice though. If you're with any group above 10 people, don't drop into a place and expect everything to be perfect. At the very least, give a few hours heads up. We wouldn't pay for your towing even if you weren't a jerk. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and for the last 3 days, it's been snow, rain, slop, etc. An accumulation of at least a foot of snow. It's caused power outages, caused people to be stranded, and we have a full house for the first time in almost a year. Housekeepers were here until 9:30 last night because we only had 2 available. Because of lockdown, we had to cut staff, and HK couldn't make it into work, etc. So crazy day, parking lot is full. We share a parking lot with a school next door. Keep in mind, we are only a 78-room hotel. We have the front lot, plus a back lot. Part of those lots are currently occupied by snow. Part by some construction containers for a remodel we would have started last year. Either way, still can almost accommodate a full house. There is a fence along the border between us and the private daycare school, and there are big signs in the 10 spaces that say, "Do not park here, you will be towed." Now, barring that, there are 3 office buildings with huge parking lots they never use, all of directly across the street. Many of those spaces are literally closer than some of the parking spaces to our front door. But either way, totally empty at night, and they don't tow. The school tows. They need those spaces for their workers, and they are entitled to them because, it's their property. Our hotel position is, do not park there, you can be towed. The people who have parked there and gotten towed who have complained to us are always met with, "Why did you park there? It says you can be towed." Now, that is your setting. So the quick story is that a guy comes in at 3 a.m. I cheerily greet him, and he starts laying into me saying he had to park in the school spaces and asks if he would be towed. I of course tell him, yes, you can. You shouldn't do that. "Well, if I get towed, you guys are paying for it." Dumb move. Has that ever worked in the history of forever? No. It just makes you sound like a cheap, whiny jerk. And now you've upset the person who you want help from. I of course said, "No, we won't." "But there are no other spaces in your lot, front or back," he complains. To which I then say that the parking lot across the street is empty and they do not tow. Which, to someone who isn't a jerk, would think, "Oh, cool, I should take 10 minutes and move my car so I don't end up getting towed." If that were the case though, then you wouldn't be reading this post. No, his response was he was not going to park across the street and that he shouldn't have to park anywhere except in our lot because he spends money here, blah blah blah. I just tell him that everyone here is in the same boat, there's other options that he doesn't want to take. Now, I guess this person had to sleep during the day and go to his work, not sure of the nature of it, at night. So, a day sleeper. And because he just lost the parking argument, he starts complaining about the noise of people nearby him last evening being noisy and he couldn't sleep. These would be people who are checking in and out during the daytime and aren't day sleepers and have every right to move around and talk and whatever. At least until our quiet time, from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I ask, as he's just walking to his room, "Did you tell anyone?" "I was trying to sleep." Meaning no. Well, we can't do anything about something we don't know about, so that's on him as well. Hope he gets the jerk tax of getting towed tomorrow for not just taking the time to ask nicely where he can park or taking the time to move his vehicle, because we certainly are not paying for this jerk's tow bill. Edit. GM relieved me at 7, has my back, agreed with everything said and done. Am I the jerk for not selling my designer clothes to pitch in for my sister's medical treatment when she won't sell her hobby items either? I've always enjoyed having nice clothes. I don't get obsessive about things that must be X label, but if I have the money to splurge on a classic dress from a reputable designer, I'll buy it. My sister is more into collecting hobby items, like video games, comic books, paperbacks, etc. She has a lot of those little Funko Pops, etc. I love her apartment. It's filled with so many things it's like a flea market of geekdom. 8 months ago, she had a medical issue that required a lot of extra attention and work. We all banded together to support her, but she ended up racking up a lot of medical debt, and much worse, also didn't make it. She's slowly recovering, but will need more care. 4 weeks ago, she let me know that she'll be able to handle her medical debt slowly over time, but said that she was hoping I could help. I told her that I'd definitely help. Then she said that her idea was that we could host a fire sale of my designer clothes and other things and probably cut down a huge chunk of the debt. I didn't realize she was being serious, but she was. There are a few things that are in the queue to be resold to make room for new items anyway, and I had already planned to split some of that money 70-30 between new items and giving them to her. I'm usually good at estimating what I can get for my clothes, and I was going to have around $7,000 to give. She was hurt and told me that she's my sister, they're just clothes. I asked her then, is she doing the same thing with her figurines and stuffed toys, comic books, etc.? She then got on my case about how she's sick, she's feeling bad, and I'm expecting her to part with the things that make her happy. I told her that no, I don't expect her to, but she can't expect me to just sell all my clothes either. She argued that I have more than enough and that I spent thousands of dollars a year, which is true, but not in the way she thinks. I'd maybe start with a $5,000 new money cap, but end up selling $9,000 worth of items, so the amount is closer to $14,000. Anyway, moving on. She got our mom and dad and brother involved, and they're all pushing me to contribute more, saying that I definitely don't need new clothes. I'm not arguing that I do, and like I said, I was planning on giving her money anyway, but she's not even willing to put up her own items into this, and to me, that sends a bad message. I feel for my sister, but if she isn't even willing to help herself in this situation, I don't think I'm wrong to not dump all of my clothes for her. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I dare you to try to get me to sell my Live, Laugh, Love shirt.
Boss demands a strict dress code. I'm a teacher, been teaching for close to 15 years. The first school I taught at was horrible. I loved my students, but the principal was horrible. It should have been a red flag that I was hired after her first year at the school and she had like 30 plus spots to fill out of 110 staff. A ton of people jumped ship because of how bad she was. Not going to lie, the school was tough. We had trouble with gangs, fights, pregnancies, and it was just a school for 7th and 8th grade. There were some kids that were harder to reach because they were reacting to things the only way they knew how. We also had some amazingly awesome kids. I would have easily still been there today 14 years later if it wasn't for that principal. I should also say that I'm a white woman. The school had 1,100 kids in it. Out of the 1,100, there were only 11 white students. Out of the 110 staff, there were maybe 10 white staff members. Most of the kids were Hispanic or African American. Majority of the staff were African American as well, including the principal. I was some of the kids' first exposure to a white person. So the principal, who was a bully to students, staff, and parents, systematically took away everything that was positive from the kids in school. The kids had to be in uniforms, but on Fridays they could wear jeans with their uniform shirt. She did away with that. She took away pep rallies. She took away field day. She once told us to be quieter while cheering for our kids at a soccer game. The 8th graders would get a dance at the end of the year. She took that away. A group of my girls wrote a letter asking her why did she take the dance away from everyone, even the kids who don't get into trouble and follow the rules, and why not just tell the kids who got into trouble that they can't come? They were too scared to ask her in person and too scared to give her the letter themselves. They asked me to give her the letter. When I tried, she refused to take it from me, saying,
"If they have something to say to me, they can give it to me themselves."
One year, Halloween fell on a Friday. At the beginning of the month, when we had our staff meeting, she made it very clear that we were not allowed to wear a costume of any kind. Throughout the month, she sent multiple emails reminding us that costumes were not allowed. I show up that Friday in a dress that has giant flower print all over it. I don't normally wear dresses. I'd gone to a hobby store and gotten 2 giant fake flowers and made them into earrings. I also got a giant red beehive wig. Voila! Mrs. Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. I'm a science teacher. She calls me into her office. This is pretty much our conversation. Her.
"Miss X, were you at the faculty meeting and blah dates?"
She has the sign-in sheet sitting in front of her, so she knows I was there. Me. Yes. Her.
"Did you see my emails about no costumes?"
Me. I did.
"Did you understand the emails where I said no costumes?"
I did.
"Why are you wearing a costume?"
I'm not. I can tell by this point she is incredibly angry. She gestures towards me.
"And what is that?"
A dress, not a costume.
"What is on your head?"
I feign ignorance and touch my head. Oh, this? Are we not allowed to wear wigs? Are you going to tell the staff? She herself was wearing a wig that day that I'd heard her brag about. Oh, she was upset, but couldn't do a darn thing. All she did was tell me to get out of her office. $127 dine-in dash. So I'm a server, and one of my tables walked out. This is going to be long, but please read. I need advice. Background. The servers are supposed to pay for walkouts when they happen where I work. I've had to pay for things in the past because I messed up, and I admit they were my fault. I've worked there for 2 years now, so I'm well aware of the rule. Story time. It's getting close to the end of the night, and I had to use the bathroom. Had to go number 2, which means I was going to be gone for a little. I say to 2 of my fellow servers, I have to use the bathroom. Can you guys please watch table F1? And they say okay. So I go to the bathroom and come back a little bit later. The assistant manager let me know I had a table. Another server got the table's drink order for me, so I'm just waiting as the assistant manager makes the drinks, and my general manager comes up to me and says F1 haven't been paid for. I notice the 2 people from the table are gone. Before I went to the bathroom, the table asked for their check, so I go to see if they left the money, but it was empty. Me. There's no money. GM. Well, you have to pay for it. Me. I don't think I should have to pay for this because I asked 2 other servers to watch my table. GM. You signed the paper, so you have to pay. You know the rules. Me. I'm sorry, but I'm not paying for it. This wasn't my fault. I walk away so I can continue to take care of my other table. Then maybe 15 minutes later, I pull my assistant manager to the side. Me. Look, I follow the rules. You guys, my managers, have always said if you step out, let someone know so they can watch your table, and that's exactly what I did. So I'm not paying for it. Assistant manager. Well, that's not fair to everyone else, and you signed the paper. Me. GM said that too, and I don't know what paper you're talking about. Assistant manager. The paper that says you have to pay for walkouts regardless of the reason. It was passed out a while ago. Me. I never signed that because I was never given one. Well, it has to be paid for. It was your table at the end of the day. It's your responsibility. Me. I was having a human bodily function. How can I be held responsible when I let others know? Well, you didn't tell me. But we can't put you on the schedule until it's paid for. Me. Well, this might be the last time we work together because I'm not paying for it. In the end, my GM gave me a speech about how I've been working there for 2 years and that I'm a good employee and I should get more trustworthy people to watch my tables. Secretly, he took some of the money off the order and told me not to tell the other servers, but I still have to pay $100 overtime like a payment plan. I just want to know if I was in the wrong for not wanting to pay it. Obviously, the other 2 servers could have been held accountable as well, but I didn't want to have my coworkers hate me. At this point, I'm just going to pay it off and work until I find a new job, because this place is far from perfect, but this whole thing has completely upset me. Psycho Karen gets kicked out of our hotel. Good evening, class. I hope we're all ready for today's lesson. Today, we're going to learn how to get kicked out of a hotel. Now, for the 2 big jerks in this lesson, we will call them Karen and Kelly, because these are some of the most entitled jerks I think I've ever met. It all started when I came into my normal work shift. It was a normal start to my shift. Manager gut punching me and my GM asking why we hit each other. I mean, why not? When my manager left, something minor happened that needed a detailed note. While doing that, Karen came into the building. Karen.
My key isn't working, and that jerk from this morning made it worse.
Oh my, I thought to myself. Me. Oh, I'm sorry for that, ma'am. I can remake that for you. I just need an ID and…
I don't have an ID. It's in my room, and I'm locked out of my room. This is BS. Do your job better.
She turned around and went down the hall. She was staying on the bottom floor, and as she was walking, she yelled at me.
Forget you.
Oh my, lovely. I heard her knocking on her room door. Her sister Kelly was in there. So I go to the back and text both of my managers about what happened. They said if Karen comes back and is doing the same thing, put my foot down and tell her not to talk to me like that or she will be removed. Cool, simple, love it, awesomeness. Karen comes back. She exits her room, slams, and I mean slams that door, and comes in the lobby screaming. Me. Ma'am, do not talk to me like that. If you continue, you will be removed from the hotel. Karen.
I am talking to you however I want to talk to you. I am the customer.
Me. Do not talk to me like that at all. Now please hand me your ID so I can remake your keys for you.
No, you're going to listen to me, and I'm going to tell you how to do your job because I was a manager at a hotel.
Me. Do not talk to me like that again. If you do it one more time, you will be removed from the hotel. This is your last warning. Karen.
You are being mean to me. Make my keys now.
Me. Ma'am, Karen.
No. Shut up. I am talking, you hear me? Do not interrupt me.
I'm really holding my tongue now. Karen.
That is what I thought. This is why my keys don't work. The jerk this morning didn't remake both of my keys at the same time. So explain to me, since this one isn't working now, but the other one does.
Me. So that key in your hand was working the whole time since my coworker remade it? Karen.
You're not going to apologize to me?
I was done being nice. Me. I'm not apologizing to you at all. I didn't do anything to you at all. You literally came in here screaming and cussing at me over your key. Give me your ID, give me the keys, so you can go to your room and leave me alone.
No. Apologize to me now. You hear me?
Me. ID, please.
Stop interrupting me.
ID.
No. Listen to me.
I will listen once you give me your ID. She gives me the ID. I make her keys. I give her the keys. I'm ignoring her now. Karen.
Your parents didn't raise you right. Who talks to a customer how you do? You're a poor excuse of a person.
I turned to walk off to text my managers. Karen,
Wow, really? You interrupted me and everything? Now you're ignoring me? I am trying to say sorry to you.
worst apology ever. She kept yelling at me from the front desk. I was texting my managers about everything. It got to the point I turned the corner and said, "Go to your room now. I'm not talking to you at all." Karen gets angry and starts cussing and yelling more and goes to her room and slams the door. GM calls me. Me. Meow Hotel, how can I help you? GM. Transfer me to that room now. Me. Okie dokie. Not sure what happened after that, but my manager called me next. Manager. What exactly did you say to that woman? Me. I told her to stop talking to me how she is. Told her if she doesn't stop, she will be removed from the hotel. I kept asking for ID, and she kept screaming like a 5-year-old. Manager. You said nothing inappropriate to her? Me. No, why? Manager. She said she recorded you and that she has evidence of you getting violent and saying inappropriate things to her. Dumbfounded, I tried really hard not to giggle. Me. She just dug her own grave. Manager. Yeah, it sounds like it. Transfer me to the room. I transferred. 10 minutes later, I get a call from our customer service complaint line. Kelly in the room called them. The woman who was dealing with the case said, she said you attacked her sister over the counter and said very inappropriate things to her. I told the lady to give me a case management number and pass it on to the managers. This is in their hands now. I texted it to them and told them what the casewoman said. GM calls me back and said, I want them out now. Heck no, I am pulling up the security cameras. I transferred her to the room. Manager called me next and was ranting about how she should have kicked out that woman earlier this morning. This wasn't the first issue with her, I guess. GM calls me back and said they have 15 minutes to get out. She told them about the cameras. She said Karen started yelling and cussing at her, and sometimes was just screaming, which I could hear down the hallway. GM told them if they come to the desk to talk to me, GM was currently watching the cameras, watching them leave. She told them if they come to the desk to talk to me, she would be calling police for harassment and disturbance of the peace, and she will throw trespassing on top of it because GM and manager told them leave multiple times each. They went out the back doors, never stopped by the desk. Kelly and Karen quietly left, and I sat in the back room singing show tunes and doing homework. Was I upset over her yelling and screaming at me? Oh yeah, big time. When you yell and scream at me like she did, I started violently shaking. I was violently shaking and in the employee's bathroom trying not to throw up because, Moral of this story, don't be a jerk and don't do drugs. I don't know if drugs were involved, just don't do them though. I love you all get an A+. Speaking of hotels, what's the worst hotel you've ever stayed at? Please let us know.
Probably the time I stayed at the Hilton. The room didn't even have a jacuzzi.
Am I the jerk for banning my former mother-in-law from my house? My former mother-in-law is 52 years old, and I am 32 years old. Back when I was 23, I married. I got my then-girlfriend pregnant. We married soon after, and she gave birth to our daughter. 2 years after, my wife got extremely sick and passed soon after, leaving me with our daughter. I decided to move several states away back to my own parents, as I work a lot, and my parents volunteered to help me with my daughter. This went on for a while until I made a good promotion and had enough money saved up to get my own house half an hour away from my parents. And since then, watching my daughter during the day while I am at work is split between the nanny I hired and my parents. Before you think I'm taking advantage, my parents insist on watching her. My daughter is 8 now, in case you wonder, and I generally work 8 to 6. My former mother-in-law decided to move to the town I live because she wants to be close to her granddaughter/my daughter. I initially had no issue with this. After all, my wife was her only child, and my daughter her only grandchild. I only started having an issue when she actually moved. Since she moved here, she was at my house pretty much all day, including when I got home after work and the weekends. She would even be there when my daughter was at school and no one was home to clean. After having multiple conversations and arguments with her where I stated I was of the opinion her behavior was inappropriate and she was crossing boundaries, she finally toned it down for a while. However, slip-ups were and are common. Last week was the last straw for me. Since the past year and a half, I have started dating again and met a woman. However, due to lockdown, we have not been able to spend much time together. With everything opening up here, I invited her over after asking my parents to watch my daughter. When we were fooling around on the couch, My ex-mother-in-law let herself in, and of course, without calling, knocking, or asking, and proceeded to lose her crap and accused me of cheating and disrespecting my deceased wife. I finally had enough. I went over, snatched my key from her, forced her out of my home, and told her she is no longer welcome in my house. She really has no one else, and several people, including my parents, have weighed in, asking me to change my mind. I am not sure if I am the jerk here. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his mother-in-law? Please let us know. Oh, I can't wait to see what our audience thinks of this one. Converted from salary to hourly. Best decision ever. I worked for a mid-sized fashion company with around 150 retail stores nationwide as a maintenance and safety coordinator. 4 months into the job, my manager quit and I picked up everything and was doing fine on my own for years, and I was the only person in charge of maintaining the stores and the alarm systems in all the stores. I did get a pay bump, but not a promotion in title. I put my contact number on every store's emergency contact list just in case the primary contacts, usually the store managers, don't pick up their phones in case of emergencies. And the store managers almost always refuse to pick up calls during off hours, so my phone would ring at least 2 to 3 times every night. 99% of the times are false alarm, usually caused by window brake sensors getting tripped by vibration from a big truck passing by, or a leaf hitting the window. I hated it, but had to do it because if no one on the emergency contact list picks up the phone, the alarm company automatically calls the police for dispatch, and there are penalties for false alarms, ranging from $50 to $200 per incident after 2 to 3 freebies, varies by location. In 2017, Department of Labor passed a law requiring all employees making under a certain amount of money to be converted to hourly so they can earn overtime. My salary was $800 short of making the cut. I brought it up with HR, stating that an hourly schedule would actually interfere with my duties, and an $800 raise in pay would make everything easier. And HR simply said, "Well, that's too bad, and we can't do anything about it at the moment." Well, okay. After that conversation, I put my phone on mute and stopped caring about anything outside of my 9 to 5. In hindsight, life was actually so much easier and better that way, and I'm not sure why I even wanted to stay on salary. Months go by without any serious issues except for the penalties for false alarms starting to pile up. One day, accounting and operations brought me into the office asking what those costs were. I told them what they were, and operations sent out a memo reminding all store managers that safety is of critical importance and they have to pick up calls from alarm companies. No one bothered asking why there was a surge of these additional costs, and I didn't care enough to remind them that it was because of me. Few more months go by, and one morning I woke up to almost 20 missed calls on my cell. Apparently, one of our Florida stores was broken into the night before at around 3 a.m. The store manager tried to get a hold of me because I was the one in charge of requesting/dispatching vendors for things like emergency board up. After an hour of trying to get a hold of me, she eventually started calling up everybody on the hierarchy for help, and I had 6 missed calls from the senior VP of operations alone. Eventually, the director of constructions was able to get a crew to board up the store, but that was almost 3 hours later and everyone was royally upset. Unsurprisingly, the second I stepped into the office, I was called into the office with all the senior management and HR and were asked why I was not there to take care of it. And I simply replied, because I already clocked out. The senior VP of operations was obviously not pleased with that answer and said it was my duty and I needed to be on standby at all times to handle these situations, even during off hours. To which I stated, "Oh, so I should be on call then. In that case, I'll have to work with accounting to get properly compensated for my on-call hours once we have a schedule established." The room went silent and nothing came out of the rather short meeting. Later that afternoon, HR called me into the office again, asking whether I'd like to become salaried again with a pay bump. I said I'll take the pay bump, but I'd rather stay hourly, and walked out. They didn't give me the pay bump. Edit. Sorry, I didn't provide what happened next, so here's some closure. I was put on call for a few weeks because it was summer at the time of the incident, and HVAC systems kept failing over the weekends in our Florida stores. And again, I was the one to dispatch vendors to fix them. Money was great during that period. Eventually, the director of construction was put on as the emergency contact for off-hour issues, and he absolutely hated it. I left the company last year. They had to scramble to get a replacement and hired a maintenance supervisor with an MBA in political science, but no related experience. My last contact from the company was the supervisor asking me what the login credentials were for all the 150 stores' alarm systems. I didn't reply. Am I the jerk for unintentionally insulting a friend's parenting? So this argument/discussion has come up more than a few times with my friends and family, but this time it really went insane. I'm a mother of a 2-year-old boy, and most of my friends/close family are the same age, early 30s or older, so most of us have kids. We have all been really open with one another, and we all know that most of us have different political and religious beliefs. It really is a big melting pot of a bunch of different backgrounds, so we try to just tread lightly. But we do debate on topics quite often, and we have always stayed cordial. Tonight, one friend, T, male 31, asked when we were going to put our son into daycare/preschool, as he is home with a nanny while I work from home and my husband works outside the house. We mentioned him going to a specific preschool that is pretty well known in our town after he turns 3. One of the moms, we will call her Jenny, piped up and said we should take him to X school, which in all fairness is highly rated, but extremely religious school. Think set prayer times, ancient building with scary stone things, Bible study, etc. I said thanks, but we won't be introducing son's name to religion until he is old enough and expresses the desire to learn on his own or if he wants to be religious. I did not think this would come as a shock to anyone. They all know we are agnostic. We have discussed it plenty of times. However, Jenny went completely hysterical and said she couldn't believe I would insult her that way, and in public as well. I asked her what she meant, and she said I was implying she was brainwashing her kids by sending them to religious schools. I tried to stay calm and just tried to explain that we have different beliefs. She very strongly believes her kids' souls are at risk if they are not baptized and or brought up in church. I told her every parent has the right to try to do what they believe is best for their kids, but she just wouldn't let it go and kept trying to convince me on why I was wrong and how she was a better mother because she was thinking about her kids' future. At this point, I had seriously lost my patience and told her maybe she should think long and hard about why she is so convinced I am saying she is brainwashing her kids when I said nothing of the sort and said, maybe you are projecting what you already think of yourself. And then I left with my husband. My husband thinks I was on point and that she deserved the comments after how crazy she got about a school choice. But the friends group itself is pretty much split down the middle. Half think I went too far and insulted her beliefs. The other half think she shouldn't have approached the subject knowing we weren't religious. I think I may be the jerk with how harsh my last comment was, and I know my temper was starting to stir up towards the end of it. But I also think you shouldn't ask for an opinion you don't really want. Wanting to get some unbiased feedback from both sides of the fences on this one. Update. Wow, this blew up overnight. I woke up to a text from Jenny that said, "Sorry about last night, please call me when you get the chance." I did and we talked. As I figured, this blow-up of hers wasn't even about me. Their oldest daughter is 9 and apparently went to a family birthday event where her oldest cousin, 11, male, told her she was dumb and just a little kid to still believe in God, and told her he was made up and called her names and I guess lots of other fun comments a kid bully would say. It all culminated in her daughter asking why she goes to church if her cousin X doesn't and if she could stop so she wasn't a freak. Jenny and her husband apparently have been struggling with reaffirming their faith with her on listening to her request. This all happened a few days before last night, so apparently she was projecting quite a bit and went overboard. She apologized and was sincere and I accepted. All is good now. She even asked my viewpoint as my mom was Methodist but my dad agnostic and how I grew up and was able to share how they raised me to decide for myself what I believed. Overall, a good resolution to a crappy fight. Falsely accused me of cheating? Well, I'll ruin the curve. So this was back in high school, 10th grade, honors chemistry. First day of class, the teacher spelled out the rules and some info. 1. If you had an A going into the final exam, you did not have to take the final. The final was so tough, it was graded on a curve. 75 was the highest grade ever in 20 years. 3. So, if the highest grade was 75, then everyone would get plus 25 added to their score. 4. Also, if you were caught cheating, you received a 0 for that test and got in trouble with the dean. 5. Talking during a test was okay, as long as it was not sharing answers. Weird rule, I'll admit. No problem, I thought. I love chemistry. I'll have an A going into the final and I will not have to take the dreaded final. It did sound scary after all. Trouble started with the first exam. I finished. It was not that hard, and I was bored waiting for class to end. Being an immature 15-year-old, I whispered to the person next to me, "Look at this." I showed him my calculator, old days, which had numbers 7734, which upside down looked like heck. I said, "That's what this test was." A few days later, I got my test back. Cheating, 0. Please see me after class. Long story short, that heck joke was the reason. I took it to the spineless dean, who rescinded the 15 days of detention. I was allowed to talk after all, but did not remove the 0. The teacher even admitted at the disciplinary hearing that he knew I did not cheat. He said I had a 100 on that test, and no one else did. But too bad, rules are rules. So the rest of that semester, I worked my butt off, and a week before the final, it was clear I would still fall 1 or 2 percentage points below an A. I'd have to take the terrible final exam, all because of my immature stupidity and that 0 for non-cheating. Now, I am all for rules, but I am also for common sense and fairness. Making me take that test was really about the teacher's ego, pride, and saving face. He admitted as much. He was actually still upset I did not get 15 days of detention for, by his admission, not cheating. I first talked to the principal. I offered to receive a B for the class and not take the final, because I knew it would help others with the better curve. I did not want an A with other students mad at me. Principal said too bad. Okay then. I then approached the teacher and said, "Look, you know I deserve an A." He nodded his head in agreement. "If you make me take the final, I will get at least 95% and I will kill the curve for anyone else." I was a bit crappy for sure, but I knew I could make it back up. He said, "Tough, and you won't get above 75, Mr. Smarty Pants. No one ever has." Challenge accepted and malicious compliance initiated. I studied as usual, and I told everyone else that there was not going to be a curve for the final, and don't blame me for what is going to happen to your grades. I am being forced to take this test. Before the final exam, some of the students who had to take their final pleaded with the teacher. They had no doubt in my abilities as a curve wrecker, but he was one stubborn jerk. No dice. I got a 98 on the final. Everyone got 2 points for the curve adjustments, which in the past would have been at least 25 points. Kids were upset, parents were upset, meetings full of shouting and swearing were held. Through it all, I made sure no one was mad at me. After all, I told everyone this was going to happen before it happened. The rest of the year, the principal, dean, and teacher were all upset with me for my stunt. Huh? They had to deal with a lot of irate parents, I guess. 15 years later, I found out that the 75 max score held up every year before and after me, except of course for my year. So in the end, about 100 innocent students were penalized so a teacher and administration could save face. I got my A and ended up class salutatorian. Edit. I did feel bad that some classmates became collateral damage in this drama, but I made sure they understood that there were 2 easy solutions. Just give me a B or let me out of the final requirement that the teacher and admin rejected. All the decision makers had a chance to avoid the outcome. After all, I was not going to purposely tank the final just to improve the curve. Have you ever had a teacher who was a real jerk? If so, what did they do? Please let us know.
Oh, I still have nightmares about my kindergarten teacher.
Am I the jerk for overreacting over a cake? I, 23, female, am living with my boyfriend, 27, male. I've definitely gained the lockdown 15. So for 2021, I decided to go on a little health journey to lose those couple extra pounds. My birthday came around the corner, and one of my friends made me this lovely lunchbox cake. It was a tiny Earl Grey cake, about 4 inches in diameter, with little heart-shaped strawberries and frosting frogs holding signs that said, "Happy Birthday." It made my little heart happy. I took it home and decided to eat the next day, as I was having digestive issues at the moment, and I wanted to enjoy it on date night with my boyfriend. It was the perfect little add-on for a cheat day too. My boyfriend came home, saw the cake in the fridge, and asked if he could have a slice. I said no, and that I wanted to eat it the next day, and that he could have some the next day too. He made little comments here and there, sulked, and after I continuously said no, went into his room to play video games for the rest of the night. When I went downstairs this morning, the cake was gone, and there were dirty dishes in the sink with the little signs of happy birthday crumpled and soggy on top. The whole cake was eaten. Obviously, I knew that my boyfriend was the culprit. I confronted my boyfriend, and it didn't go well for a lack of better word. It basically boiled down to, "If you would have just let me have one slice, I wouldn't have eaten the whole thing without you." He said that this was his way of getting back at me for being so selfish and stingy. I tried rebutting and arguing that it was my birthday cake and I wanted to eat my own birthday cake. He still didn't understand why the cake was so important because my birthday was celebrated a week ago. He even joked that he was helping me out since I was on a diet anyway. I was getting upset, and of course, being the crybaby I am, I shed a few tears. He didn't really like that, so he started chastising me a bit more, calling me immature. So instead of staying home for our date night, I decided to stay at my friend's place. I told him that I was upset at him at the moment and that he was making me more upset with this conversation, so I was leaving for the night so we could both cool down. He's now saying that I'm a jerk for leaving and overreacting over cake. My friend said that I'm not overreacting at all and that I was in the right for being upset because it was my birthday cake. I'm really conflicted. I'm definitely upset about the situation, but after all, it was just cake. Maybe I shouldn't have started a fight and should have just let it go. Maybe I should have just stayed and talked it out for conflict resolution's sake. Am I the jerk for leaving and overreacting over a cake? I can't be hired directly? You don't get my system. So my backstory. When I was about 20-ish, I worked for a company named for a fruit that didn't sell fruit. Actually, I worked for a primary supplier for them who was doing the repair division in a new location. Cast. We've got myself. We've got supervisor. We've got lead. So I started in a smaller position and quickly moved up to repair evaluations. Basically, if the thing worked when we got it, but not after the repair, I need to find out why and correct it. Management had to manually search every device in an Excel sheet every day to find the devices I worked on. I took it on myself to design and implement an automatic system. Given I was a temp at the time, they extended my employment with the promise of direct hire due to this design. It worked flawlessly for close to 2 years. Right around the time I was due to figure out if I was being brought up or not, Lead starts playing around and avoiding the situation. I contact Lead multiple times a week for the next month with little to no reply. I spoke with Super after Lead started ignoring me and not replying. I was getting desperate at this time to know whether I need to look for new work soon or if I would have a great job for years to come. Finally, I had enough. I rebuilt the system I designed with a kill switch, so to speak, and hid it in the system. I emailed this new system to ask the managers, including Lead and Super. They all liked the new update and praised my ingenuity. I let them know that I was the only one who knew how to design and operate this, but would love to be brought up to permanent so I could train someone else if I were to take vacations or something of the like. This was ignored. Edit. In light of learning, I could be more specific. Here's an explanation of this kill switch. It's an Excel sheet that linked to another daily generated file from the repair division. I created the link and was/am Microsoft certified in Office. Don't know if it's still a thing. It was back then. Haven't needed to be certified in forever now. So I knew fun workarounds and tricks. My email is tied into the system, so it would automatically scrape the required info into another sheet, which was then parsed even more into other sheets. It's long and complex, but did exactly what was needed for the people who needed different sets of data. My email was tied into the design very specifically in specific places. The data emailed out, if you're familiar with Excel, doesn't usually include the formulas to reach what's shown in the boxes. I ensured it wasn't as the higher-ups like to copy-paste to their emails onwards. Easy for them, easy for me. Finally, my last week was here, and I reminded Lead and Super I haven't been moved to permanent status. I don't have a replacement for this position, to which I received the usual, "It's not that hard. We know the system, and anyone could do it." So my last day, they have me start bundling out my last report and to close out my email and file system. The kill switch was the part that was wiped in the device reset before I was allowed to collect my last check. The wipe is to ensure I haven't linked my provided computer to an outside source, I guess. Never quite knew exactly why. They wiped my computer, took my badge, and ensured I wasn't sneaking any devices out and wished me well. Fast forward a few days, when Super calls me, asking why the file system isn't working after I left. I reminded him that it was built on my company-provided device, and I hadn't been allowed to teach anyone else the system before I left. The silence as the wheels clicked in place was like hearing heaven itself. He immediately hung up and called back, asking me to come back full-time with benefits immediately. I had already taken a new job, interviewed the day before, and accepted the position on the spot. The money was way better, and was to start the next week. I told Super his offer had to beat my new hourly rate and effective the next day or no dice. He never called me back and from friends who still work there, that system had never been fixed, and nobody can figure it out enough to reverse engineer it. That was close to 12 years ago now. I'm pretty proud of myself. Am I the jerk for telling my close friend she shouldn't have another baby? I'm 25, female, and my friend Pam, 24, female, has a son, 2, male, who I love dearly. Pam and I have known each other since we were 15, and we had similar dreams. We are both in a group of friends that are tightly knit. Pat is on again and off again with her baby's dad, and they had an explosive argument, so she stayed at my place for the week. I was surprised during the stay because she didn't really watch her son. He was bumping his head on the walls, playing with the toilet, and playing on the stairs. I watched him, but when I had to go to class, I handed him to Pam, and most of the time, she had let him loose again so she could be on her phone or whatever. She mentioned she wanted to have another baby with her boyfriend, and she made it seem that because she had nothing else to do, she should give her son a sibling. She asked for my opinion, and when I asked her if she wanted my honest opinion, she said yes. I told her she shouldn't because she still lives with her 85-year-old grandmother. She isn't financially stable, and her relationship with her boyfriend is rocky. I told her bringing another life to this world is a huge responsibility, and she mentioned a time last year when I tried getting her to go back to school when I tried giving her my study guides for anatomy and physiology during my undergrad days. I was confused why she brought that up, and she said that I act like I'm better than everyone. I only tried encouraging her to go back to school because she admitted she was jealous that everyone else in our group of friends were achieving their goals. I assured her I was not trying to put her down, and she said that I told my other friend that I wanted to have a baby with my fiance once I finished my master's degree and passed my boards. I was like, okay. I never applied any of that to her, but it's true. I wanted to have mental and financial stability before having kids. She started to cry and insisted on leaving. I tried to get her to stay and leave in the morning when the roads were clear, but she pushed me away and left. She's telling our friends that I'm a snobby jerk. I called her and texted her that I was sorry if my opinion hurt her, and my opinion was something she didn't even have to consider because she's an adult, and she just said that I'm a cold-hearted jerk. Am I the jerk here? I've tried to talk to her about the possibility that she is experiencing depression, but she tells me to mind my own business. Entitled Mom demands I shovel her driveway for free. I've been a fan of this sub for a while, so I'm excited to finally have a story to post. Background: my family moved to a New England town in March of 2020. I'm 18, but living with my parents due to my university doing remote learning right now. We don't know any of the neighbors super well because we of course haven't been socializing much since getting here. I do know one elderly man, who I'll call FN for friendly neighbor, pretty well. During the warmer months, when I was walking my dog, I'd often see friendly neighbor out on his porch and I'd stop to chat for a bit. He's super nice. The entitled mom, who I'll call EM, from this story lives across the street from me. We've never spoken before today. My town got a couple inches of snow yesterday, so this morning I went out to shovel the driveway. It occurred to me friendly neighbor might need help with snow shoveling given his old age, so I knocked on his door and asked if he'd like me to do any shoveling for him. He very gratefully accepted and even offered to pay me, though I let him know that wasn't necessary. I shoveled his driveway and also the walkway to his house. Friendly neighbor has a really short driveway and the snow was pretty light, so I was done in under 30 minutes. I got back to my house at a bit past 11 a.m. At 11:30 a.m., the doorbell rings. I put on a mask and open the door. Entitled Mom is standing there, no mask. What ensues is one of the weirdest conversations I've had. To paraphrase, me: "Hi, can I help you with anything?" Entitled Mom: "Yes, I was just wondering what time you were going to be coming by." Me: "Huh?" Entitled Mom: "Coming by my house to shovel. My daughter is going to a birthday party at 2:30, so it definitely needs to be done before that." Me, somewhat confused: I wasn't going to shovel your driveway." Entitled Mom in accusatory tone: "I saw you shoveling friendly neighbor's driveway." "Yeah, I mean, I can shovel your driveway for money." Entitled Mom in a disgusted tone: "You expect me to pay you? Do your parents pay you every time you do a chore?" Me, after a moment of shocked silence: "They provide me with food and shelter and pay my college tuition, and they're my parents. I don't know you." "Okay, fine. How much did you charge friendly neighbor? I definitely am not letting you overcharge me." "I didn't." "You didn't charge him, but you are trying to charge me?" I didn't charge him because I was simply doing him a favor. He can't shovel his driveway himself.
I have 3 kids. How do you expect me to find the time to shovel my own driveway?
That's not my problem. If you want me to shovel your driveway for you, it'll be $50. Honestly, if she had just knocked on my door and politely asked me to shovel her driveway, I would have agreed to do it for $10. But given how ridiculously rude and entitled she was being, I wasn't going to lift one darn finger to help her unless she was paying me a good amount. Well, when I named a price of $50, it completely set her off.
$50? You expect me to pay you $50 to shovel one driveway? There is absolutely no way in heck I'm paying that. That's theft, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
After her little temper tantrum, she looked at me like she was expecting me to apologize, but I just stared at her. So she decided to say one more thing.
Oh, and by the way, that sissy mask makes you look like a jerk.
Me. The price just went up to $100. If you call me another name, the price will be $200. Finally, she left. I was already planning to make a post in here about her insanely entitled behavior. Then at 1:30 p.m., she showed up at my house, banging on the door and yelling that her daughter was going to be late. My dad, who wasn't home when Entitled Mom came by in the morning, but who I had filled in on what had happened, yelled at her through the door that he was going to call the cops if she didn't get off our property. At around 2:40 p.m., I saw Entitled Mom's son, who I think is around 10 or so, shoveling their driveway. So it would seem Entitled Mom's daughter was late for that party. At around 4 p.m., the doorbell rang again, but this time it wasn't Entitled Mom, thank God. Instead, it was a plate of cookies from friendly neighbor along with a card thanking me for shoveling his driveway. At the bottom of the card said, P.S. I could hear Entitled Mom yelling at you. I'm sorry if your kindness to me prompted that. But don't worry, she hates everyone, and so far as I can tell, everyone returns the favor. Would you shovel Karen's snow if she asked you to? Please let us know.
Come on, I know at least one of you will help me.
Am I the jerk for calling out coworker on lying about her language skills? Last week, a new colleague, Kathy, 33 female, started working at my 25 female workplace. She instantly stood out in the team because she seemed like someone who was very loud and assertive. 2 of my colleagues, me and Kathy, were having a coffee in the break room. We were the only ones in there and we were sitting far apart when the subject of travel was brought up. My colleague said she wasn't booking trips anymore because it'll probably get canceled because of lockdown anyway. Kathy immediately cut in about how sad she is because she travels so often and she goes on these far, exotic trips to Europe as her hobby. When I think exotic, I think the Bahamas or something instead of Europe, but cool. Kathy then jokes about how all this no travel business is making her fear that she'll lose some of her foreign language skills. I asked what languages she spoke. She claimed to be fluent in 3 European languages, among which were French and Dutch. Kathy said that she was at a native speaker level and went on about how people in Europe were always surprised when they found out she wasn't from there. I was excited because I never get to speak Dutch over here. I was raised in Belgium, which has 3 national languages, French and Dutch, which are my mother tongues and the most commonly spoken there, and German. It's quite common to be pretty fluent in at least 2 out of the 3 languages in Belgium because you're required to learn them at school, along with English from a young age. I told Kathy, "Oh, look, dan hebben we iets gemeenschappen." Oh, fun, we have something in common then. She immediately pulled this sour face and asked me if that was supposed to be Dutch. I said yes. She laughed awkwardly and said she couldn't understand because I have a terrible accent and must not be that good at speaking it. Now, see, I don't have an accent. I speak Dutch more fluently than I speak English. I told Kathy that I grew up speaking Dutch and speak it to my family all the time. She got upset and asked what languages I speak and where I'm from. I told her I'm from Belgium, so I also speak French, and I added, which you just said you speak as well. Cool, we can speak French instead. I acknowledged that I was a bit of a jerk here because by that point I knew she probably lied about speaking French as well. She then shoved her chair back and angrily got up and said,
"Whatever,"
and stomped off. It was pretty awkward. My other colleagues just kind of shrugged and said she shouldn't have lied. However, She later approached me and told me I embarrassed her by acting superior about my European heritage. I told her that there was no way for me to know she had lied about speaking those languages. She rolled her eyes and told me I was immature. A colleague told me that Kathy had called me a little jerk who enjoys bullying new colleagues behind my back later. I don't think I was a bully at all, but I don't want this thing to turn into a huge thing. Do I just apologize to keep the peace? Am I the jerk? Edit 1. I'm not sure about escalating this to HR, which a lot of people have told me I should do. I feel like this might make me look immature to the rest of my colleagues, of which I am the youngest, and it might not need to go that far. It depends on if Kathy is willing to put this behind her and be professional. If all else fails, I do have witnesses who would be honest about what happened, so I think I might be in the clear if she tries to twist the story. Edit 2. Some people have taken offense to me giving the Bahamas as an example of an exotic place and are trying to make this into an issue. I didn't know exotic was an offensive term in the US. Do I think of the Netherlands, Belgium, England, Norway, which were countries she was describing as being faraway exotic destinations, as my idea of an exotic trip? No, not because there's a lot of white people there, but because when I think of exotic, I think of a place with nice sunny weather, white sand beaches, and a blue ocean. Maybe it's because I'm from Belgium, but I don't really feel like being in my home country where it's dark and rainy all the time is quite that experience. Edit 3. Some people think she might not have understood me because she is fluent in Dutch, but learned it in the Netherlands, which has different accents. While it is true that the Netherlands and Flanders have different accents, I didn't speak a very specific dialect like West Flemish or something. I spoke the general Dutch you'd see in the news in Flanders. I didn't speak quickly to try and make it incomprehensible to set her up. I genuinely believed she spoke Dutch because that's what she was saying, so I talked to her in normal conversational Dutch. The same kind of Dutch I'd use in a work environment back in my home country. The same kind of Dutch I use with friends from the Netherlands, but with a soft G. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is Kathy? Please let us know.
Definitely Kathy. Sounds like a total Karen.
The revenge you all seek. Moons ago, I worked in a restaurant located smack dab in the heart of a sunny, popular destination city. Every year, our city would host the Granddaddy Comic Convention, where people dress as their favorite characters from comics to cult films. Literally, the streets would be filled with the most realistic costumes. Hulk, Spock, Goku, Chewbacca, Sailor Moon, Austin Powers, plus celebrity sightings. It was definitely the highlight of my year as a server. People were, for the majority, in a really great mood. The nicest hordes of humans you can imagine serving. However, come nightfall, the party people would still relentlessly come out, and our restaurant, like many in this area, would transition from restaurant to club by 10 p.m. My shift usually was the second to last night scheduled, so I would cover all of dinner and help the closer transition into cocktail mode. So it's around 11 p.m., and my shift is over, and I'm excited to just clock off and have some drinks with all these creatures when my manager asks if I would stay to do a bottle service just for one customer. He promised I wouldn't have to serve any tables, just take this bottle service, and it was a guaranteed $250 sale. Typically, people who do bottle service tip really well. I figured, why not? All I'd have to do is hoochie moves with the bottle delivery, pour up some drinks, and then check on them occasionally to make sure they have mixers and ice. Plus, we were allowed to drink on shift. Easy peasy. So the night goes on, and the dude ended up getting another bottle. Nice. Their group ended up staying until close, and when the bill finally came, which my manager actually comped the second bottle in half because he knew our DJ, the dude throws down a bunch of cash, and I'm thinking, cool, cash money, honey. Wrong. He literally left enough to cover the bill with $5 left over. So, as a server, I wanted to keep my optimism and think he will just leave the rest of the tip when I bring him his receipt. Wrong. It was over $500, and he left me $5. I was livid. I could have been off 4 hours ago, but now my sales were $500 higher, and I have to give the bar $50 of my money because they get 10% of our liquor sales. I was fuming at my manager, and he genuinely felt awful. But because he was friends with our DJ, he felt comfortable enough to approach him and tell him that $5 was really insulting as a tip. Remember, I've been busting my butt through hordes of sweaty costumes since 5 p.m. It's now 3 a.m. So the dude gives my manager a 20. Whatever. I take the loss and just learn my lesson. Anywho, Fast forward to a month later. This jerk decides to come back on a night that I'm actually closing. He gets bottle service again, and my mood just took a nosedive because I know I'm gonna get done over again. The night ends, and this dude is pretty tossed. I'm trying to bus and clean while he and his friends finish their drinks since they were my only tab left. The dude comes up to the bar that I was cleaning off and asks me, "How much do I owe you?" I give him his bill, and now he starts asking me in a condescending and drunkenly way, "What tip would make you feel better?" I replied, "I really don't care, just pay the bill." He then began throwing wads of money on the counter. "Take what you want." Ugh, this is so degrading. I repeat that I just want him to pay the bill and I don't care what else he leaves. So my general manager pops her head out and asks me if all my tabs were closed. I tell her I was just waiting on Captain Jerk Canoe to figure out how much money he wants to give me. But because we're all on time crunches for OT, she does the coolest thing. She hangs out next to us while this dude starts with the "How much do you want?" line. She butts in and asks, "Are you ready to close out?" He drunkenly responds, "Yeah, all my money is here. I told her to take whatever she wants." She grabs all the money on the counter and says, "Thank you so much for coming back in again. We really appreciate you." Goes to the back, cashes out his tab, and puts the rest in my book. This dude put roughly $500 on the counter. His tab was $150 because we comped his bottle again. Ugh, don't ask. I go to the back since I'm officially done with this jerk, and I can hear his girlfriend say, "What the heck did you just do?" He didn't argue. He knew he put his foot in his mouth when he realized how much money he put on the counter and literally said, "Take whatever you want." My manager then goes back out and says how much we appreciate him and that we are officially closed and has the bouncers usher him out. It was the sweetest karma I had ever seen play out. My manager asks if I had a good night, and I thank her for that cool move. The end. Want me to be extra specific on my time spent during the workday? I can do that. I work in sales. I spend time in my actual office and on the road making cold calls. The small company I work for uses a call logging software that plans my trips to customers. A typical logged call would look like this: called X customer, time spent in call, call notes. About a year ago, the owner of the company asked me to create a customer called office work to ping on the software to let him know I was in my office and not out seeing customers. In the call notes, I would write a short general description on what I did in my time in office. A month ago, the owner decided his fresh out of college 22-year-old son was fit to be the manager of all salespersons. His son has commenced to micromanage my daily call reports to the fullest extent. He has to write a report to his father what each salesperson does every day. I get texts or emails almost daily asking what exact times I did what in my office or on the road. This culminated to the owner's son demanding I log each individual task, such as driving to a customer, working on a spreadsheet, or even warming up my vehicle. The example he gave me: 7:30 a.m. to 7:49 a.m., checked and responded to email. 7:52 a.m. to 8 a.m., warmed up truck, etc. Each entry takes about a minute to create and log. He wanted to know what I was doing every minute of the entire workday. Fine, I can play ball. For the past week and a half, I've been scrutinizing every single second of the day to ludicrous extent. I timed 5 minutes and counted the number of breaths I took to get an average amount of breathing per minute. About 18 breaths per minute. Better log that. I began timing my bathroom breaks and logging it. My fastest bladder draining is 48 seconds, including washing hands. I timed how long it would take to fill up my water and logged it. 29 seconds from start to back at my desk. I timed how long to tie my boots and logged that. 4 seconds each boot. Sitting at a stoplight? Logged. He now knows I can knock on a customer door 10 times in 3 seconds. For about a week, I logged everything I did, every waking moment of the workday, including the bites of my salad for lunch. Heck, I even got the other salesperson to join in the malicious compliance. He was inundated in hundreds of reports each day he had to comb through. Today, he sent an email to the Salesforce that we are no longer required to give specific times for tasks, but rather a general description would suffice, just like it was before he took over. Have you ever had someone try to micromanage you? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
Can't be micromanaged when I've never had a job.
My grandfather made a Karen cry. Okay, so for a little bit of backstory, I've always been in severe pain after I eat for hours. I've had a history of acid reflux since I was young, but it had recently gotten worse. So I went to the doctor and found out I have GERD and some pretty bad ulcers in my esophagus from it. Another important detail is that I help my grandmother a lot because she's going through chemotherapy, so I'm very conscious about wearing a mask when I'm out. Sorry for all that, now onto the story and cast. We've got me, we've got grandfather who drove me around, we've got the pharmacist, and we've got Karen. After a long doctor's appointment that my grandfather was nice enough to drive me to and from, I was given a new prescription, but of course my insurance changed where I can pick up my medicine. My very delightful grandfather, who drove me to the doctor, offered to drive me to the pharmacy to pick up meds so I wouldn't need to leave the house again and drive to the pharmacy. I accepted because all I wanted to do was go home and sleep. We arrived at the pharmacy and I went right to the counter to tell them my name and any other information they need while my grandfather looked at compression socks for my grandmother, and they say romance is dead. Then cue Karen. She looked like the classic Karen. Yoga pants 3 sizes too small, some god-awful sequins shirt, ugly puffer trench coat, and to top off the whole look, no mask. After she enters the pharmacy, she decides to stand way closer than she should have been even before lockdown, and I politely told her, "Ma'am, you're not wearing a mask. Could you please back away from me? No, there are pieces of tape on the floor so you know where to stand." Her response was to very loudly say, "Okay, jerk," while getting even closer to me. When she said that, however, it got the attention of the person being helped at the counter in front of me and the pharmacist. The pharmacist told Karen, "You need to wear a mask or leave. No mask, no service." Karen,
"Oh, shut up. I'm a valuable customer."
Pharmacist, "I can give you a mask if you don't have one, but if you refuse to wear one, you'll have to leave." As she says this, the person in front of me leaves, and I walk up, and Karen shouts,
"I'm not going to wear a darn mask. Now stop harassing me."
Now this is where my grandfather, on the other side of the pharmacy, takes notice, but all he does is pop his head out from the end cap, and we exchanged a thumbs up. Pharmacist, "Ma'am, please just wear a mask." She then places one on the counter and then asks me for my information. Halfway through giving me my information, Karen comes very close to me, to the point that I can feel the wind when she decides once again to scream.
"Did you not hear me? I'm not going to wear a mask. And you,"
pointing her wrinkled, disfigured finger in my face, almost touching me,
"need to get the heck out of my way. I have things to do."
Now I normally stay out of arguments as much as I can, but like I said before, I just wanted to go home and sleep, so not my best moment, but I slightly raised my voice above talking and said, "Ma'am, please either back away from me or put on a mask." And this is when my grandfather walks over to see what's happening. My grandfather is an ex-Navy Master Chief and is the definition of short Irish temper, and also happens to be very protective of me because I'm the firstborn female grandchild. In my family, it's important if you are the oldest and a female, because you will have to take care of the elderly, sick, and the younger children of the family, and the only grandchild who lives nearby, but isn't still in elementary school. Karen then yells back, while also cornering me between the pharmacy counter and a wall, and goes,
"I don't have to listen to a thing you say, you jerk."
Cue Grandpa. "Listen here, you sorry excuse for a human being. You clearly have no respect for other people, so I will have absolutely none for you too. You have such a dense skull that you can't even acknowledge that many people have passed after getting sick because of stupid people like you. And unless you are blind and deaf, you heard the lady and my granddaughter tell you to wear a mask, and I know you saw the sign to wear a mask. So either put it on or leave." Both the pharmacist and I are in shock of what just happened, and then all of a sudden, Karen burst into tears, hysterically sobbing, reluctantly grabs the mask, and slowly walks out of the pharmacy, still sobbing. My grandfather, in the sweetest old man voice and smiling with his eyes, asks, "You get your meds yet, doll?" I shake my head no, and then proceed to give my information to the pharmacist. I get my meds and we check out with them. Some compression socks and flowers for my grandmother. After we get back in my grandpa's truck, I thank him and we drive back to my grandparents' place so I can take care of my grandmother and nap. Local artist expects librarians to sell her art. Here in my library, we often invite local artists to display their art on our walls above our magazine section. Last weekend, I just happened to be working when the latest artist came to hang her work. She was very upset that we would not remove our tax forms and information from the lower part of a wall, and thus left that wall blank because it would ruin the look of her paintings. Today, we found out that she actually went and called the local paper to say she was having a meet and greet at our library next Saturday. She didn't ask or mention it to anyone at the library. The paper published this little news item without contacting the library. Because of lockdown, we can't hold any gatherings or meetings in our library. We are even doing our programs virtually. My branch manager called her to let her know that she can't have a meet and greet here at the library because, well, we are a library. Plus, we have restrictions on gatherings due to lockdown. I don't know if anyone showed up to her meet and greet last Saturday, but I did ask my branch manager to tell me the whole story. After we heard that she had posted in the local newspaper that there will be a meet and greet at our library, a big no-no in these times, it fell to my branch manager to call her and let her know she can't do this. When my branch manager contacted her and told her that she can't have her party, the artist went ballistic. This is where it got even more bizarre. My branch manager couldn't get a word in edgewise as the artist continued to berate her on the loss of her party. In essence, the artist was under the impression that the library staff would promote and sell her art. No, we are librarians. She kept asking my manager,
"Well, what are you going to do for me?"
My manager let her know we are a non-profit, and the only thing we can do is have it posted in our newsletter that her art is on display at our branch. I don't know where she got the idea we would sell her art for her. The entitlement is strong in this one. In case someone wants to know, yes, her art is pretty good. Am I the jerk for telling my roommate that she can no longer dog sit for her mom in my home? Back when lockdown hit, I was moved to part-time and needed a roommate to help with bills. I had the rent covered, but electric and heat were out. I don't know anyone in the area. I'm in college in a different state. So I posted an ad and had a male classmate with me when people came in to view the apartment. A girl who was 1 year ahead of me, but under the same major, seemed like a good fit. Very quiet, keeps to herself, and has an exemplary rental reference. I moved her in shortly after. My rent is $1,500 for a 2-bedroom flat. My electric and heat bill is $400 combined. I told her to just cover the $400 that I couldn't afford and obviously pay for her own food. She didn't want to get on the lease because she didn't want it to be permanent. Whatever, I allowed it. She has been here for 6 months. Now, 3 weeks ago, my roommate's mother asked her if she could dog sit her new puppy because apparently she didn't have time to take care of the animal herself. My roommate didn't ask me, just said yes. I will admit that originally I didn't mind this at all. Having a little ball of fluff running around was entertaining. However, we started running into issues. This dog is not housebroken and refuses to go outdoors to use the bathroom. My roommate will stay outside with the puppy for hours, and the dog will refuse to do its business until it is inside, where he proceeds to take care of business all over my kitchen and living room. Thank God for no carpets, I guess. Well, her mom started bringing over puppy pads and said that she uses them for the dog 100% of the time, which would explain why the dog refuses to do it outdoors. So we've been using these puppy pads, and as expected, the dog uses them. However, the puppy pads aren't really good. I didn't realize it whenever the dog uses the pad, it seeps through the bottom and it immediately goes onto the floor. I hadn't been cleaning up the pad, obviously. My roommate was, and she failed to tell me that the amount of pee getting trapped under the pad was causing watermarks on the dark hardwood floor. Of course, the pads are in my roommate's room, so I never noticed until this morning when the puppy took off with my charger in his mouth and I had to go retrieve it. That's when I noticed a very noticeable white stained square on the floor, as well as the closet door chewed at the bottom. I texted my roommate, who left to go to the store, and told her she wasn't allowed to have the dog here anymore because I'm now going to lose my security deposit. She's arguing that it's her place too, and she can have a dog there if she wants because it doesn't state otherwise on the lease, that she refused to get on. I told her she could move out if she doesn't follow my rules, as I'm upset to lose that deposit, which would help me secure another place when I leave next year. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is her roommate? Please let us know.
Definitely the roommate. I'd kick her out ASAP.
How a meatball sub ended in divorce. While at my Subway store, I'm the manager. Our franchise general manager comes in to do a review of my employees, and I received a call from another nearby store of ours in need of some product. So I head out to transfer the product to another store, so the first part of this is all secondhand from our general manager. My big burly closer has a middle-aged Karen, haircut and all, come in. She's ordered food for herself and her husband in the car. My general manager can see them both from his seat in the lobby. He's watching my closer make the sandwich via our cameras while paying attention to his customer service, correct questions, politeness, etc. She orders a club for herself and a meatball sandwich for her husband. She proceeds to ask for a little extra sauce and then piles it full of toppings he had asked for. Gets rather demanding as my closer is adding the toppings per Subway regulation, even for extra, making her ask multiple times. Of course, my general manager is in the store, and I'm not there to take the heat if he doesn't. Something I did for my employees, especially him, since I relied on him to keep my already long work weeks below 80 hours when people called out. Man's a saint of patience. She's rude, but nothing abnormal for fast food. She takes her food. Husband and Karen proceed to go home to eat. I return from the other store and sit with our general manager in the dining area. We go over what went down while I was gone, how my closer did. Fantastic, of course. And he catches me up on the owner's focus for the store and drama from other stores. He used to be my manager for a year before we both got promoted. Then in comes Karen's husband, the poor divorcee. He comes in livid, swinging our front door hard enough I thought it was going to slam against the store next door's windows. He starts, "Do you know what you've done?" pointing to my closer, who is twice his size by the way, and usually a gentle giant. Closer, is there something I can help you with? He's obviously confused, considering he could not have seen the husband sitting in the car. Husband, yeah, you can pay my alimony and buy me a new house. She's going to take me for everything, and it's all your fault. I'm going to sue you, the store, the owner, Subway. General manager and I stand up to handle it. My general manager rests his hand on my shoulder and tells me he has this. General manager, sir, what exactly has happened? Your employee put too much sauce on my sandwich. It fell out onto my pants, and my wife got angry. The argument ended with us getting a divorce. You are going to pay for it. General manager, oh, sure, I'm sorry to hear about that. I'd be happy to give you a free sandwich. Free sandwich? What? General manager, but holding up a hand to have husband let him finish. If meatball sauce on your pants is causing a divorce, I hate to tell you that your marriage had problems long before this. Karen's husband then spills an incoherent set of sounds before storming out and peeling out of our parking lot. In the end, Karen's husband sent in a complaint to corporate. Our corporate contact came in the next month for his inspection and asked me about it. I brought up the cameras and audio of the evening. He chuckled and smiled. Corporate, please email this to me too, will you? Me, sure. May I ask why? Corporate, 1, proves we have no fault in this divorce in case of suit. 2, and most importantly, it's hilarious, and my coworkers have to see this. So that's how a meatball sub ended a marriage. Angry random Karen doesn't like where I parked. Okay, so needed context. The store I work at has a parking lot on either side of the building, front and back. The back lot is where the employee parking is and where we also park our work vans. The front lot very rarely fills up, but last week there was some construction done to the building, so there were work trucks filling up the front lot. Also, the back door to our store had been replaced, but the auto close arm wasn't, so you have to hold the door and shut it slowly, or else it slams shut and it's super loud. For the purpose of this story, I am Jason, the lady I had the entanglement with is Karen, and my boss is Scott. Sundays are my late start days, where I come in after the store has already opened to run my van route. I pulled into the back lot in my POV, wearing my uniform hoodie and polo shirt. Both have the store logo on them. I also usually wear a black unmarked hat as well. So I park, and as I'm getting out of my car, the lady in the car next to me stops pulling out of her spot and rolls down her window. The following conversation ensues. Karen,
Excuse me, you can't park there.
me, I sure can. Karen,
You sure can't. An employee just yelled at me for parking back here. You have to go around front.
me, no, it's okay, I work here.
Then why aren't you in uniform?
Me, points to my shirt logo. I am in uniform.
Where's your badge?
I don't have one.
Well, the other guy was wearing one.
Me, My manager wears a tag that says manager because we all wear the same polo shirt.
How am I supposed to know that?
I'm speechless. Karen,
Whatever. Your customer service sucks anyway. When I get in there, I'm telling your manager.
me. Great. He's the one with the manager badge. At this point, I'd gotten my bag out of my back seat and had started walking towards the store. Karen,
Hey, jerk. I'm still talking to you.
I'm about to turn around and say something when I guess Scott heard the commotion and decided to try and get me out of a tough spot in his own way. He throws the back door open and yells, Jason, what the heck are you late? Me. This woman told me I can't park here. Karen.
He doesn't even work here.
Scott. Ma'am, I asked you to pull around front to the customer parking.
You can't treat your employees that way.
Scott. I thought you said he doesn't work here. By now, I've made it into the store and Scott waves me in, making full eye contact with Karen. He moves his hand and lets the door slam shut over top of what she was yelling at him. Unfortunately, I wasn't there long enough to see if she actually came in and tried to deal with him or not. Would you move to a different parking spot if Karen told you to or not? Please let us know.
You will if you know what's good for you.
Nice old lady gets help. Mean old lady gets arrested. I'll start with some background information. I'm about 6 feet tall. I have long hair for a guy, and I'm about 16 years old, and I'm apparently an old person magnet in stores. I'll be referring to the Karen as mean old lady. Okay, so today was a strange day. I was just studying for my test for tomorrow when I realized that I ran out of snacks. It was about 10 a.m. at the time, so I figured I'd just go to the big chain store a few blocks away from my house. Looking back, I should have known most old people shop at those hours in my hometown, but I was just hungry for snacks. I am not really scary, but because of my purple jacket, black pants, and man bun, and earphones in blasting rap music, I didn't really look like an employee, or so I thought. I was just browsing the store to find some snacks and maybe something for dinner that day. As I ducked to search between the salted nuts for a decent-looking bag, I felt a hard tap on my shoulder. I turned my music off and turned around, only to see a nice old lady asking me if I could help her. I always get asked to help by old ladies. I don't know why, but they always seem to like me. So I say, sure, what can I help with? She says that she wants a microwave, but she can't lift it into her cart. I tell her that I will come with her so I can help. I already had everything I needed now, so I just tag along with the nice old lady and help her with putting it in her cart and onto the belt. I kept talking to the nice old lady, and she asked me why I was so nice to her, so I say that I just try to be nice to help elderly people when I can. She tried to pay for my snacks too, but I rejected her offer because I had my card ready already. When I put her microwave in her trunk, she slid a 10-euro bill into my hand and said it was good to see that some people still behave well. After the nice old lady drives off, I realized that I forgot to buy potatoes for dinner, so I ran home, dropped everything off, and went back in. This time was less wholesome. I entered the store and went immediately to the potatoes. I tried looking for the best bag because the chain was known for their potatoes that would have more black spots than any other store, so I find a nice bag of good-looking big potatoes. As I'm lifting the big bag onto my cart, I hear a groan and tapping of a shoe on the tiled floor. So thinking that I was standing in the way, I try to move aside, but the mean old lady isn't having it. She starts to groan even louder. Knowing that I messed up, I turn around and guess what I see? A not-so-nice-looking old lady. She was probably around 60, but was wearing clothes like a 20-year-old would wear. I'm talking a crop top and light blue jeans 3 sizes too small with sandals on. And of course, she had the haircut, but more gray than blonde. I try not to judge anyone, but she was on another level. She loudly said,
Finally, I've been trying to get your attention for at least 5 minutes now.
I say sorry, I wasn't paying attention. She then started screaming at me about how she demands me, not asking, but demanding, that I help her put her stuff in her car after she pays for it. I tell her that I'm not going to do it because she screamed at me. She then says,
You have no choice. You have to. It's your job. I saw you outside helping the other lady 15 minutes ago.
I tell her, first of all, I am not an employee here. And second of all, if I was, I'd decline to help you due to your behavior against me just now. Then I try to walk away, but she now is in Alpha Karen mode, so she tries to push me aside. She was kind of on the bigger side, so her push with all force was kind of harder than I expected. I ended up tripping over a tile that sticks out partially and faceplant into the aisle next to me. The Karen, knowing what she did, screamed,
"Ah, no, don't touch me."
I was completely stunned by her actions, so didn't know what to say. So an employee arrives and she starts crying and telling him her lies while they walk to the closest bench so she can sit to rest after being jumped. I tried to get back up myself, but due to my bad landing, I managed to hurt my back and couldn't balance myself properly, so I just decided to lay down and wait until someone arrives. Luckily, an old man saw everything and came up to me to help me up. I said I can wait and that I didn't want him to hurt his back helping me up, but the old guy wasn't taking no for an answer. He just picked me up gently and gave me his cane to lean on and giggled. "My wife makes me use it just in case, but I don't need it now." As soon as I thank him, the manager arrives with a not-so-happy look, until he sees me barely being able to stand and the old man. He asks me what happened, and I tell him my story, and the old guy backs me up. He then said to me that the police are already on their way and that we can stay in his office until they get there. As soon as we hear sirens, I feel scared. I'm a boy with a man bun and am being accused of assaulting an old lady, so in my head, my life is over. I'm trying not to puke out the stress while we wait. After mean old lady did her story and said I should be fired to the police because the police can hire me from a store I don't work at. They come to me and start asking me questions. The old guy is still with us and getting bored. He just says, "Jim," apparently the manager's name, "just show them the camera footage instead of wasting this kid's time." The manager says, "Okay, here," and turns his screen to show us the entire thing on security footage. I was so relieved to know that I had proof now. After 10 minutes, he asks if I would like to press charges. I said I'll contact him with my parents later. He gives me his details, and we walk out. Me too, but slowly. The officer then cuffs the mean old lady, and she keeps screaming all the way to the car. The old man said he was the manager's old supervisor and was also shopping for dinner that day when he noticed Karen bullying customers. We laughed a little bit, and I ended up buying his groceries as a thank you for helping me, and I'm now in the hospital waiting for the results, but they think my back will be fine. Was it worth it? Probably not. Was it on purpose? Probably not. Did she deserve it? Definitely. I may be the jerk for not helping an elderly lady, but she was well capable of it if she can push me to the floor. Would you help a Karen in the store if she was mean to you or not? Please let us know.
You better, or you might end up like our boy here.
Am I the jerk for asking to be paid after babysitting my niece for over a year? I'm 20, female, and my niece is a year and a half old, and I've been my sister's, 27, female, only babysitter since she was born. My mom occasionally babysits, but only about once a month as she lives 45 minutes away from my sister, and I only live 15 minutes away. Well, my sister has been asking me to babysit a lot recently. For example, in the past week, I've babysat 5 days, and it's not just for an hour. Yesterday, I was there from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I haven't been home for more than a few hours, not sleeping, in days. She made me get somebody to cover my shift at work today so I could babysit, and does this often. She doesn't allow me to eat any food at her house, but I'm also not allowed to take my niece in the car. I've never been pulled over or in any accidents that I was driving, so my only option is to order delivery, which can get expensive. She's told me in the past she's going to start paying me, but the only time she's ever paid me was over New Year's Eve, where she paid $40 for babysitting overnight. My sister just moved over 30 minutes away from me. I told her if she wants me to continue babysitting, I'm going to need to be compensated for the time and money I'm spending in gas and food. She got really upset and told me that I shouldn't want to be paid for spending time with my niece. Am I the jerk? Update. I texted my sister and said, "Look, I love being able to see my niece as much as I do, but I need to start getting paid for babysitting. I would have made $180 at work this weekend, but I lost $130 since you told my boyfriend to tell me to split the $100 with him for gas money. I'm your only babysitter other than mom, but mom barely babysits, and I have been a few days a week. I want $10 an hour. That's lower than you'll find from anyone else in the town where you live." And she responded with,
"'Kay, I'll find someone else."
She then went on to tell me that I need to get my crap from her house by next weekend or it's getting thrown away, and that I shouldn't have came at her instead of trying to have a discussion. She pulled the "you're her aunt" card and said,
You didn't ask to be paid, you demanded.
At this point, I kinda lost my crap and told her everything I had wanted to say for years, and she said,
"We're done. Delete my number."
"Done? Thank you everyone for all your advice. While it sucks she reacted this way, I'm extremely proud of myself for finally sticking up for myself after 20 years. Edit. Thank you for the awards." I feel like I should add this. My sister is a stay-at-home mom. Her husband works full-time and is as awful as she is. He fully supports not paying me and doesn't think I should want to be paid for spending time with my niece. They're both massive jerks. Also, thank you for all the kind words. It means a lot. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
Definitely her sister. Karens will continue to be Karens until someone puts them in their place.
The bane of blacksmiths. So, little bit of background. When I was around 14, I got into forging knives with the most basic equipment. Literally just charcoal and fire bricks for the forge, and a hammer and tongs for my actual equipment. And I've been doing this for roughly 6 years, like this once or twice a week. When lockdown started, I had a whole lot more time on my hands as my work was closed for 4 months, but reopened with limited hours. So now I have more time, but still have an income, so I decided I'd put a little money into my forge equipment. This happened last week. Out of courtesy to my neighbors, I told all my neighbors that I'd be making more noise as I was picking up the frequency that I used my forge as I got new equipment. All of who were fine with it, one of them being excited as he wanted me to make him a knife, all except one, my next door neighbor, who I'll call Karen. Now, Karen used to be friendly towards my family until about 4 years ago due to her not respecting our political views, so we stopped inviting her over and tended to avoid her since she'd try to make arguments at every turn. At most, I'll say good morning and ask, "How are you?" Anyways, I'm kind of off track. The issue she had with it was,
"I don't want you polluting my yard with the smoke it's gonna make."
And despite me explaining it's a propane forge, it doesn't produce much of any smoke, she still demanded that I don't do it. I ignored that, of course, as she cannot tell me what I can and can't do on my property, and it was really just a formality to let my neighbors know. So I set up my forge in my backyard, put down gravel so there wasn't any fire hazard, lined it with bricks, and was putting the forge together and fixing it to the large flat stone I decided to set it on. She comes over as I'm doing this and walks into my backyard without me noticing and opens up with,
"I said you can't do that."
I jump as I had no clue she's there, and that's when the fun starts. She begins yelling about how I said I wouldn't put anything back there. I didn't. How she'd get the HOA involved, of which our neighborhood doesn't have one. And when I informed them of that, she threatened to call the police, which was ridiculous. I responded with, "Get off my land before I call the cops on you." And she left, and I kept setting up my forge. Past a week, I treat the forge with no issues, and as of 2 days ago, I was working on my first knife out of it when a guy walks up to my fence and asks if I was the homeowner. I respond, yes, look up for my forge, and who's about 50 feet away on the sidewalk with her arms crossed and a smug look on her face? Karen. So I ask what can I do for him, and he says, "I'm with the county. I'm a building inspector, and I got a report from your neighbors that you are building a permanent structure without a permit." I say, "No, last thing I built was this," and gestured at my forge. He looks around and says, "Are you planning on building anything or expanding any existing structures?" I respond, "Nope," and he simply writes it down and he asks what it is, and me and him chat about the forge for about 15 minutes before Karen, irritated because I'm not getting in trouble, storms over and in her shrill, annoying voice demands,
"What are you doing? He broke county ordinance, so make him get rid of it."
And the following conversation was essentially just, "No, I didn't. Yeah, nothing's wrong here," and ended with her walking off and then driving off in her SUV. The inspector was cool and we chatted for a bit longer. Cut to yesterday. I walk out to start the forge, and while I'm getting ready to start the propane, I notice something pretty important. The line feeding into my forge is cut, and the bracket and copper tube on the tank is bent inwards, with one of the bricks from the border of the gravel laying about 6 feet away in the grass. I'm confused for a minute before realizing what happened here. I take out my phone to check my backyard motion camera to see if there's any movement. Sure enough, there was movement through the night. The normal wildlife, a fox, 2 raccoons running outside the fence, a house cat, and Karen, walking into my backyard with what looked like garden shears. And about 5 minutes later, her jogging out of my yard. So after downloading the footage to my phone and computer, taking pictures of the damage, and ordering new parts for my forge, I called the non-emergency police number and talked with the police, shared the footage with them, and they wrote down some info and walked over to her house and tried to get an explanation. She just yelled at them until they had heard enough and placed her under arrest, which didn't exactly calm her down as she was wailing and screeching like a banshee the whole way to the car, yelling some pretty harsh things at me, the officers, and another neighbor as he walked out and asked me what was happening. As of right now, she's facing one charge of breaking and entering, one charge of vandalism, one charge of disorderly conduct, and one charge of resisting arrest as she kicked one of the officers while they put her in the car. I have an appointment with a small claims lawyer tomorrow, and me and my dad have been laughing our butts off at how crazy she was. And to Karen, if you see this, as I know you're on Reddit, I'll see you in court. Hope your night in the county jail was pleasant. Thank you all for reading, and let me know if there's any way I can improve the structure of the story, as I don't think I'm too good at structuring these stories. 2/17/21, 10:55 p.m. Her family has called me 3 times today trying to get me to drop charges, each person straying from slightly entitled reasonings to inane babbling. I've informed each one that I was recording at the beginning of each call. Her son called and begged me to drop charges. When I told him, as any reasonable person would, no, as it could have hurt me, I distinctly remember he called me an insensitive jerkhead and proceeded to call me quite a few names. And when I reminded him I was recording the call, he went down the "I didn't give you consent to record me" path. He hung up as soon as I pointed out I had a recording of this. Do you have any hobbies of creating things like OP does? If so, what do you create? Please let us know.
Chaos wherever I go.
Am I the jerk for how I reacted when my fiance dropped our son off at my workplace? I, male 27, am a nurse. My fiance and I have a 1-year-old baby boy. Fiance doesn't work. She decided to leave her previous job and stay at home. We've agreed that since I'm the one working, she's the one handling home chores. Our son's care is shared, meaning there are times when I handle his feeding, bathing, cleaning, etc. However, I made it clear that when it's time for work, she should be taking responsibility. So far, everything has been going according to what we agreed upon, but recently she's been complaining about my shift hours changing, which is something I can't control, obviously, because currently the unit lacks in nurses, and it's impossible for me to do day-to-day planning because sometimes I'd work 12 hours, sometimes 15. So it's quite unpredictable, but I do my best to spend time at home and give my fiance time for herself. Her cousin's wedding was 2 days ago. That morning, my fiance wanted me to skip work and stay home with our son so she could go to the salon with her sisters. I told her I can't just skip work for the day. I already had a long day shift that started at 7:45 a.m. till 6 p.m. I told her she could either call my mom or just wait for me to come home. She threw a fit and is saying her cousin's wedding was important and I was being unsupportive. I left home after that and started my shift at the hospital. At around 1 p.m., when I was in the middle of work, it usually gets busier in the afternoon, I got a few missed calls from my fiance. Then she sent a text telling me she was at the hospital's parking lot with our son. I went to meet her there. She wanted me to take our son and watch him till she gets back from the salon at 4. I lost it. I told her I can't watch our son when I'm in the middle of my shift, and she kept saying I should just let him stay with me and that it was okay. I absolutely lashed out at her. I called her unreasonable and selfish. She could have let someone watch him, but she said her family was busy. We got into an argument and she left him with me. I had to drive to mom's house and let her have him till I finished my shift. I got home and I was extremely upset. My fiance and her mom said I overreacted and that I was supposed to help since he's my son too. Mother-in-law said I was in the wrong for caring more about work than my own son, but I already told my fiance I was busy. She wanted me to apologize for yelling and causing a scene, but I refused after this. I want to mention that she's normally fine with my work schedule until recently, and whenever there's an event, we'd both make arrangements and I'd stay with our son while she's gone. This time, I told her I was busy and that I won't be allowing her to distract me from work, but she was being stubborn, thinking I'm prioritizing work and being unsupportive. Those might be her mother's words, but my fiance takes responsibility here. The misunderstanding, as my fiance calls it, could have ended with a discussion, but her mother is determined to paint me as the bad parent who isn't pulling weight and taking part in responsibility in caring for our son. I'm tired of her and how she keeps judging me while ignoring her daughter's behavior. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his fiance? Please let us know.
The good thing is that they're not married yet. OP still has a chance to not ruin his life.
The entitled mom that I broke with a song and dance. It has been a while since I've been mistaken for working at another market. For a while, it seemed every other month I'd be in a store, shopping comfortably, and somebody would come out of the woodwork and demand help, recognizing me from Failmart. But with lockdown and the masks, I've been happily incognito wherever I've gone in search of better prices and selection from the Cult of Sam. At Failmart, I moved to another position from the pharmacy and now work the door, handing out masks and wiping down carts. It's a terrible job, but I'm making more money doing this than any other job, so figure that one out. I've also changed my look. I'm no longer a rock and roll yeti with long hair and band t-shirts, but dress more like a respectable member of society. I have discovered I'm quite the clothes horse. A fancy wool overcoat, a green vintage army jacket, a leather biker jacket, whatever I feel like tossing on that day. Hats, different shoes, various different pants. The point I'm making is I do not look like my Failmart alter ego when I'm out and about. I wear a black ball cap, a black faux military coat, and a name tag. I wear this day in and day out, but never in my civilian life. With the addition of the mask, it's difficult for the customers to recognize me. However, big snowstorm heading into my area, forecasting a foot of snow and sub-zero temperatures. I decide to forego shopping at my home store and head off to another superstore in the area in search of propane, ice melt, batteries, the usual prepper stuff I try to lay in when it's possible I'm going to be snowed in for a few days. Got my cart, listening to the store music playing the same tired 70s and 80s inoffensive fluff they always do. And it happens. I pause to grab a bottle of hot sauce and the much feared call of the entitled customer.
Hey, you!
Nope, not me. Can't be calling for me. I'm in a wool coat and a stylish Stetson. I'm not working. Oh crap. She actually whistled at me. I turned with dread, and yep, there she is. One of my Failmart customers, and one of the more infamous ones to boot. Let me describe this woman. She's basically spherical, a messed up angry face, beady eyes, and has a habit of wearing stained sweats no matter what the weather. She comes into Failmart and demands an electric cart and will get extremely huffy if none are available. I have run my butt ragged trying to meet her demands and never get a thank you. Her daughter once stole someone's cart from her from the bathroom area, but that's a story for another thread. So she's straining the store's electric cart, leaning over the handlebars and glaring at me. For once, her devil spawn are not with her.
Took you long enough? Get me a 40-pound bag of rock salt, now. I want to get home before the snow.
Now, since I have a lot of time to think at Failmart, I sometimes amuse myself by making up little songs. Anything to make myself giggle and keep my mind off of my soul-sucking job. I glare at this woman, take a deep breath, and off to the races we go. To the tune of Oogie Boogie song from Nightmare Before Christmas. You're joking, I can't believe my ears. You're joking, you think that I work here? Look at me, dear lady, tell me what you see. I've got no darn name tag, so please just let it be. I start doing a soft shoe dance in my boots, slowly turning about, arms akimbo, showing off my non-Failmart attire. She's now staring at me like I've suddenly grown an extra head and it's making googly faces at her. I don't know why you're thinking that, I help all that I can. But for now, between you and me, I'm not the Failmart man. I grab my cart, spin it around like it's Ginger Rogers, and skip off down the aisle singing, You're joking! I glanced to look over my shoulder right before I took the turn, and she was still sitting there, mouth agape. I couldn't stop grinning the rest of my trip. Entitled parents make my employee cry, get their free meal voucher revoked. Before we begin, a little bit of backstory. I am a manager for a chain sushi restaurant somewhere in the western United States. This restaurant chain offers something very special to a select few customers who either show that they deserve it, aka spend so much on sushi overtime, or make a good enough impression on the staff that they recommend you get one. Doesn't happen nearly as often as you'd think. A set of platinum chopsticks that entitles you to as much free sushi as you can stuff your gut with. The cast. We've got entitled mom. We've got entitled kid. We've got the father, whose sanity I question for staying with this lady. And we've got the employee. The day started off like any other day. Going in at 10:30, calling an all-hands meeting, getting everyone pepped up and ready for the day's opening. prepping counter space and cleaning utensils. You know, typical restaurant stuff. We're about 10 minutes from opening when one of my newer employees walks in. She used her front door key and just came right on in. Unfortunately, entitled kid, entitled mom, and dad all followed in soon after her. At this restaurant, it's custom to seat yourself and a member of waitstaff to come take orders. And when I say custom, I mean there are signs literally every 5 feet on each bench and table side saying to be seated and wait. Now, from this point in the story, I'm piecing everything together from employee's side of the story and what I saw on security tapes after handling the issue in person. The trio walks in. Instead of being seated, walked directly up to the cashier's desk, which there's nobody currently at because we're still 5 minutes from officially opening. Entitled mom.
Can we get some dang service?
Employee then snaps to attention and hops directly over to the desk. Entitled mom.
I want my free sushi, and I want it now.
She then slams the platinum chopsticks on the counter and starts spouting off everything on the menu she wanted. Employee verifies that these are her chopsticks with some difficulty. Each pair is specifically registered to one person with a serial number stamped on the side. Employee. Will it just be you ordering today? These chopsticks only entitle the person they're registered with to free food. Entitled mom.
No, these chopsticks mean I get as much as I want, and I want enough for me and my family.
Employee. I'm very sorry, ma'am, but the contract that you signed to get those chopsticks clearly stated that you were only allowed one serving of your choosing at a time. Plus the…
Listen here, you snot-nosed brat. I don't care what you say. You're going to give me my free food, or I'll go to your manager and have you tossed out. Serve me now.
It's at this point I'm brought into the picture. Employee comes stumbling into my office, tears streaming down her face, and 3 other employees right behind her to quickly relay the story. I'll spare you the rest of the details, as there was some not-so-clean language spoken between me and entitled mom. But here are some of the highlights. Entitled kid decided it would be a good idea to run around every table and knock over all of the soy sauce bottles, the ones that don't have a lid. Then run over to the drink machine behind the employee's only counter and completely soak himself. Entitled mom started shrieking at the top of her lungs that she's going to get what she wants and we're going to pay for her son's dry cleaning before throwing the peppermint bowl beside the register across the room. Meanwhile, dad just stands there like this is all normal and smiles. Before everything was said and done, she managed to not only get her platinum chopsticks revoked, but she was also gifted a lovely pair of matching bracelets by a local police officer. Employee was sent home for the rest of the day with full pay while I took over her spot on that shift. Luckily, the rest of the day went smoothly. Edit. Much apologies for not sharing the rest of the details. Unfortunately, I have to cover my butt in case somebody from corporate sees this. I very much like my job title, and I'd very much like to keep it. Now I really want some Chinese food. Do you guys like Chinese food? And if so, what are your favorite items? Please let us know.
Ooh, Chinese food? Hurry up and finish these stories so we can go to Panda Express.
A Karen demanded that I clean the toilet. I visited my mother at work today. My mom works in an office that gives out documents for truck drivers. Before the lockdown, I used to go with her often to work to help her. The work there is hard. I was usually handing over documents for the drivers, photocopying documents or other things. Like every employee, my mother has keys to the office staff toilets, where the drivers don't have them and have to use another, paid toilet. In order not to lose money, my mother would give me the keys, as it was today. My mother always told me that the women in her work were terribly messy. When you went to the toilet, there would be water spilled all over the sink, paper was all over the floor around the toilets, and sometimes people didn't flush the water after using the toilet. When I went to the toilet, the first thing I saw were pizza boxes standing on the sink, just left by some woman. I asked myself, how can you be such a person to leave something like that? I hate messes. It's just that when I see something being messed up, I can't walk past it, and I just have to clean it. So I took those pizza boxes, folded them up, and threw them in the trash. And then I saw that there was a big puddle of water on the floor. Great. I took the paper and started wiping it up. Then a woman came in there. She walked past me, ignoring me. I had not even finished wiping the floor when she shouted,
"There's no paper."
I knew what a problem it was when you went to the bathroom and there was no paper. Hold on. I took the roll of toilet paper and threw it into the cubicle where she was and went back to mopping the floor. When the woman came out, she immediately approached me.
Start doing your job seriously.
Me. Excuse me?
You should make sure that there is toilet paper in every cubicle.
Me. I don't work here.
Yes, you do. Otherwise, why would you be wiping the floor?
Me. Because there was a puddle of water?
And why are you wiping it?
Because people like you make a mess and leave it for the cleaners to clean up later?
That's what cleaners like you are for. By the way, wipe around the toilet. It's dirty there.
I looked at her. I was mad. Me. I don't work here. And even if I do, it doesn't give you the right to humiliate me or anyone else. If there weren't any cleaners, you wouldn't be happy. I threw the paper in the bin and left. I felt the woman grab my jacket. I turned rapidly towards her. Me. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. I didn't hear you flush the toilet.
You are disgusting.
The woman was shocked. I fixed my jacket and left. Later, I told it to my mother what had happened. She was proud of me for doing that. Please respect the work of others. If you walked into a public bathroom and saw a mess, would you clean it up? Please let us know.
No.
I was hoping you'd leave that behind for me and my son. This happened about 3 years ago and involves my best friend, her son, who was about 3 at the time, and I. She and her son's birthdays are like days apart, so I invited them out to have breakfast, but she's awesome and decided to make Dad babysit while we had a girls' brunch. I brought along a gift bag with a present for her and one for her son. The thing is, I really love giving meaningful gifts. I may not be able to afford something huge, but I make up for it in really trying to find something I think the recipient would like. I've known my best friend since we were 8. She loves to smell good, but hates putting chemicals and crap on her skin. I don't blame her one bit. So I bought her a rather nice little collection of natural soaps, and her son, who was big into trains at that time, a toy train that you could snap together and it would teach you numbers and colors and such. Well, the thing about this soap is that if you walk into a room, in about 10 seconds you will smell it. It smells divine, just intoxicatingly good. So we got to the restaurant, get a booth, and I give her the gifts. Of course, the first thing she pulls out is that soap, and she's over the moon delighted with it. That whole corner now smells incredible, and a couple people are like, "Wow, what is that? It smells so good." She also checks out the train and goes on and on about how much her son is going to love it. He did. Our waitress comes over, and she also asks what smells so good. My friend showed her the gifts, and she was all about wanting to know where to get it and so on. I told her. The waitress made a comment that she had a son the same age and that he was obsessed with trains. We just kind of smiled and laughed it off, enjoyed our meal. I paid and left a nice tip, and as we're getting ready to walk out the door, the waitress stops us. Waitress: "Hey, where are you going with that?" My friend: "With what?" Waitress: "That gift bag." My friend mistakenly thinks this woman might like to, for some reason, have the bag these things came in. So she's like, "Oh, do you want it? Let me just put these in my car and you can have it if you..." Waitress: "No, I mean what's inside." My friend and I are utterly confused at this point and are like, she's putting them in her car to take home to her son? The waitress's face falls. "Oh," and her voice just trails off. Awkward silence. Finally, I ask the waitress if she wants me to write down the places where I got these gifts. She snaps at me and goes,
"No, I was hoping you'd leave them behind for me and my son."
My friend's like, these are my birthday gifts that she got for my son and I. Why would we do that? That's crazy. She already told you where to buy them. Now excuse us, we're leaving." We start walking out the door, and this lady is a bit large and is sort of blocking the way, and she's like,
"My son really loves trains, and that soap smells so good. Are you sure you can't just give them to me and buy yourself something else?"
My friend: "Yeah, I'm sure. Bye." And we walk out the door, hurriedly. This was by far one of the weirdest moments either of us had with a random entitled mom. We still joke about it to this day. Before lockdown, one of us would bring over food and be like,
"Hey, where are you going with that? My son really loves fries. Buy yourself something else."
Would you have given the soap to the waitress or not? Please let us know.
What if the waitress was actually just joking about the whole thing?
She knew I didn't work there. First off, background. For 6 years in the late 90s and early 2000s, I worked for an educational toy store in the local mall. It was a smaller store, and we got to know many of the parents and kids that came in by face, if not their names. Now to the main story. When the store ended up closing, it had the side effect of me now having to go somewhere else to buy gifts for the kids in my life. Because of that, the following November, I'm in Walmart checking out their toy section. While doing so, I heard a voice in the next aisle over that, while familiar, I couldn't place it. Not finding what I was looking for in the aisle I was in, I go to the one with the familiar voice, mainly because it was the next aisle, but it was also because it would let me put a face to the voice. It turned out to be a former regular at my old store. We make eye contact. I nod, expected that to be it. She was talking to a store employee, so I was simply going to stay out of the way and do my shopping. Apparently, she had other ideas. Let's call her Parent, and we've got me. Parent: Hey OP, I know you don't work here, but can I ask you a question? As I turn to look at her, I see the stunned employee looking from her to me and back, just floored. I can't tell if this would be a good toy for my son, and the employee doesn't normally work this section. Maybe it's because I've worked too many years of customer service, or that I remembered her being one of the easier to work with parents. Either way, I said sure. It wasn't a toy line we had carried at my old store, but we had sold things from the same company. I flipped the box over in my hand for a few seconds until I found the recommended age range, pointed it out to her, and started asking questions. What was her son's age again? What grade was he in? Did she feel he was above average for a kid his age developmentally? These questions led me to giving her a somewhat informed opinion about if the toy would be a good fit for him. For anyone wondering, I asked those questions because every toy had a recommended age range, but this was for the average kid. If a kid has a strong aptitude in the right areas, it's completely safe for them to play with a more advanced toy with a parent say-so. Nee, he's too young by the listed ages, but it's only by a year. If you think he's safe with it, I think you'll be okay. She looks relieved. Parent: Thanks so much. He really wanted this, but I couldn't find the age range. I felt kind of stupid, but you found it so easily. Me: Honest mistake. This company is bad about putting their ages where people normally put their hands to hold the box. I'm used to it. Not really true, just trying to be nice. Parent: Thanks again. I miss your old store. With that, she puts the toy into her basket and leaves me and the still stunned employee standing there. Employee: What just happened? I laughed, then explained how I knew the woman. I'm not sure I would have been okay helping in your position. Me: It's cool. She was always one of the good customers. Even upset and frustrated, she doesn't yell, and I'm willing to bet you understand how rare that is. The employee nods sagely. Besides, it didn't even take 5 minutes. Well, see ya, I gotta get my own shopping done. With that, I went down to the end of the aisle to see if they had what I needed. So she knew I wasn't an employee, and she wasn't a crazy Karen. But her just turning from the employee to ask me, and the what the heck look of the actual employee's face, always makes me smile when I remember it. Am I the jerk for refusing to make any more meals for my girlfriend after she kept complaining about my cooking? Things have been great with my girlfriend for the most part. We, 28 female and 26 male, have been together for 4 years and living together for 2. Lately there's been some tension, so I feel like maybe that's why things may have boiled over. We both work a lot, so we have both been very cranky and moody, especially my girlfriend, who snapped at me a few times and has been in a really bad mood. For the past few days, what's really set her off is my cooking. I'm usually the one making breakfast, packing our lunches, and dinner. Literally any time I've been at the stove, she complains about how bad the smell is and gives me crap about using stuff that has obviously gone bad according to her, or saying it tastes bad and won't even finish eating. This has upset me. I'm not a chef, but I do pride myself in my cooking, and she's talking about how bad my food is. I've had my coworkers try my lunch, and they tell me it tastes just fine. I figured with all the stress she's under at work, she probably needed an outlet to let out her frustration, and maybe that's why she's giving me crap about simple things. I don't know. But I snapped a little this morning when she again complained about the omelet I was making us. So I actually dumped the eggs in the trash, told her she can make her own darn breakfast for herself then, and I'm not cooking for her anymore if she's gonna keep acting spoiled about what I make. We ended up having an argument over this, and we left for work mad. Anyways, my girlfriend didn't come home and her sister called me. My girlfriend's mad at me, and her sister thought I was being a jerk for reacting so immaturely by refusing to cook for her anymore when I know she works a lot. so sometimes she doesn't have the time to prep her own meals. I don't know why this was turned into a bigger deal, but here I am sitting at home wondering if I was being a jerk for losing my cool and telling her that I'm not cooking for her. Just didn't think it's fair for her to be talking crap about my cooking when she never has before, and thought, well, if she doesn't like it, then she can take over the kitchen. Was I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his girlfriend? Please let us know.
I'd throw some ramen in the microwave for her.
Customer wants items delivered to home, outraged when I ask him his address. First post on Reddit here, but binging all these posts reminds me of an incident that took place back in 2013 when I was working at a branch of a large upmarket department store chain in South London. I've moved on from this job a long time ago now, so please do forgive me if some of the details are a bit hazy, but here's the gist. A couple of blokes from Eastern Europe come in wanting to buy a kettle and asking what the options were for them to pick it up later. One of them did not speak. I suspect his English was not good. The other had reasonable English. I explained that they could pick it up right away as we had them in stock. If they wanted to, they could pick it up later in the day from Click and Collect, or for a fee, we could deliver it to their address, provided the address was in the UK or Ireland. They chose the delivery option. I put in the details of what they wanted to buy to the computer and came to the section where I had to put the delivery details. This was where the fun began. The conversation went something like this. Me: could I ask your address, please? Moron:
Why do you need to know my address?
Me: because you said you wanted it delivered. Moron:
But why do you need to know my address?
That's how we know where to deliver your package. Otherwise, we won't know where to deliver it.
But it's your job to know these things.
Me: it's my job to ask you. I'm not a psychic, and I don't automatically know your address. Moron:
But I don't feel comfortable giving my address out. I don't know you, and I want to preserve my privacy.
Me: I understand that, sir, but if you won't give me your address, then I can't have your kettle delivered to you. There are 20 million addresses in the UK, and if I pick one at random, chances are it won't be yours. Now either you can tell me your address, or you can come pick it up at Click and Collect, or you can take it with you now. Moron:
You're an idiot.
At that point, I had enough, and his insult was a good enough pretext to end the conversation. I informed him that I was not going to be taking this kind of treatment and that I would not be serving him further. He muttered something to his friend in their language and moved away. Thankfully, I never saw them again, and no doubt he went to annoy some other underpaid customer service guy with his tomfoolery until he got his kettle. Am I the jerk for rescinding my offer to bake cakes for my friend's wedding? To preface, this wedding wasn't going to happen until lockdown ends. I'll be using fake names. Those involved are me, 22, female, the bride/friend, Cassie, 24, female, and her fiance, Adam, 25, male. Cassie has always loved my cakes and asked me to make 8 for her wedding late last year. We agreed they'd be 1-tier cakes to be used as table centerpieces. I loved the idea. We agreed that they'd be decorated a particular way that wasn't too elaborate. I was happy with the arrangement and super excited by the prospect. Early January, she decided she wanted 3-tier cakes instead and wanted them decorated much more intricately. The intricacy wanted is nowhere near my ability. I don't really have the free time to learn how to do it either. I have a lot on my plate in my day-to-day life, and I know even doing the 1-tier cakes would be a little tricky, but absolutely manageable. I politely said I couldn't do that and tried to offer a compromise. I offered to find a way to do 3-tier cakes, but more simplistic than she'd have liked. I also offered to get her in contact with a skilled friend of mine who I knew could do what she wanted. She'd have to pay, but the price would have been extremely good, and they'd be beautiful cakes, worth every penny. She got very angry at this compromise effort. She called me selfish and told me I was sabotaging her big day, then demanded I do it for her while getting a few of her friends to send me rude and disheartening messages. This was heartbreaking for me, but I told her I could no longer do the cakes, and she got angrier. We haven't talked since that until yesterday. I received a message yesterday acting like nothing happened, asking me to do the cakes again because I owed her. She said I'd be a useless friend if I didn't. I declined, and she chewed me out again, saying things that were unnecessary and I'd rather not repeat. I'd had enough. This had already been stressful for me, and I hated being dragged into it. I messaged Adam, sending him some screenshots, asking if he'd please make her stop lashing out. She was hurting, but I didn't deserve the things she said. I didn't get a reply until today, where he apologized profusely. He told me she had done this to another friend before me, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back for him, and he was going to call off the wedding until they had been to counseling together. I thanked him for being understanding, but a few hours later, Cassie and her friends started harassing and threatening me. It's been horrible. My boyfriend is urging me to cut out Cassie, but I can't help feeling like a jerk. If I made time to learn, this whole situation wouldn't be happening. So does that make me the jerk? Am I being selfish? He's reassured me that I'm not, but I could really do with an outside perspective. Edit, update. Oh my gosh. I fell asleep last night after posting this and didn't expect to wake up to a response anything like this. Thank you so much everyone for taking the time to respond. I'll try and find time to respond to some comments later. To touch on a few things I've seen mentioned, Cassie is now cut out, as are her friends. People saying I was being a doormat were completely right, and those saying I need therapy also were. I've been actively looking for a therapist I click with. I used to be good at recognizing behavior akin to this, but lockdown has taken a toll on my mental health. A few people mentioned a contract-style situation with a friend discount. I'll definitely do some thinking on that idea to try and help avoid situations like this from happening again. For those saying I shouldn't have contacted Adam, I did on the sole basis that this was his wedding as well. I stand by my choice to contact him. For those mentioning getting the police involved, if any further threats happen, I will. I've documented everything that's happened so far just in case. Thank you again for taking the time to hear me out, support me, and give judgment. I really appreciate it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Cassie? Please let us know.
Adam should be thanking you, to be honest. You just saved him from ruining his life.
Am I the jerk for not giving my non-biological son his college fund? About 6 years ago, I bought my oldest child one of those home DNA tests to find ancestors, and I found out that my 12-year-old was not my biological son. After official lab testing, it turns out that only 2 out of 4 of the kids were actually mine. Luckily, my wife and I signed a marriage contract forfeiting marital property, common in my religion, in the event of infidelity, and this gave me rock-solid proof. I gave my kids an ultimatum because I did not want my ex-wife in my life, period. No co-parenting BS. Although it was probably not the best decision, we let the kids choose, who are 12, 10, 8, and 7, who they wanted to live with, and my ex-wife decided to move to another state with one of her many cheating partners approximately 500 miles away. I assumed they would all stay with me because my wife was a complete psycho. Unfortunately, when my oldest, 12, male, heard that he had a real dad that was not me, he decided to live with my mom to have a relationship with his biological dad. My 10-year-old daughter's biological dad passed away, and she was always very close to me, so we had no issues maintaining our father-daughter dynamic in light of this info. Fast forward 6 years, an ex-son is 18 and planning to go to college. When each of my kids were born, I immediately started putting away money for them in a fund for them to spend on college, house payment, or whatever really. I have done well in my business, and my oldest son's fund is about $120,000. I originally paid my son and ex-wife monthly for child support and alimony. Both of these commitments were barely enough for them to live on because we agreed to a lower settlement when her lawyers realized she had no chance in court due to her being the town bicycle. Apparently, his mother has been telling him about his fund and expected that I would be paying this out. However, these funds were marital property and belonged to me. This kid calls another man his father and has barely spoken to me in 6 years despite me making several attempts to reach out to him with birthday cards and offers for him to come for holidays. I said, these funds were started for my kids, and had you decided to be my kid, this fund would belong to you, and hung up the phone. Obviously, this infuriated him, and he responded by calling my business partners and telling them that I had disowned him because he was gay. I think the biggest irony is that I have so little relationship with him that I didn't even know he was until this incident. But he thought that my conservative values had something to do with him not getting the fund. Am I the jerk for not giving him the fund? In fact, I plan to give his fund to my soon-to-be stepson, who is only 5, instead. I realize I am punishing a kid for mistakes made when he was a 12-year-old, but at the time, he did not want to be my kid, and these funds were meant for my kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his son? Please let us know.
Oh, I can't wait to see what our audience thinks of this one.
This isn't a dog daycare. A while back, I was working in an office that allowed dogs. It was an open floor plan, and since customers never came into the office, we kept the dog food and water bowls right by the front door just because it was the most convenient space and no one else would see them but us who worked there. Of the 6 of us who worked in the main office area, I was the only one who didn't have a dog. No pets policy at the apartment, and always felt horribly left out. To make matters worse, across the way was a doggy daycare. One day, a very frantic woman came in, and she had an absolutely massive dog with her. Usually, the only people who came into the office were associates who had appointments with someone working there, but it was rare they brought their dogs. She ran up to me and said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yes, how can I help you?" And she said, "I wasn't sure if you took walk-ins, but I read online I could just drop him off. I tried to call, but no answer." I didn't know what she was talking about at that point, and I said, "Come again? Who did you call exactly?" Thinking if I could just saddle her off to whoever she came to see, I wouldn't have to decipher her problem. She said, "Well, it doesn't matter now. Look, something urgent's come up, and I really need to leave him here. Here's his food he likes, and I'll be back in a few hours, and..." At this point, I wasn't thinking of the doggy daycare. I thought maybe she was a friend of someone here. I said, "Well, all right. Can I get your name, please?" And she said her name, and then asked if I needed her to sign anything. And I was so confused at this point, I just said, "Why would I need you to sign something?" And she left almost immediately. So I took Otis, the dog, to the back and showed him to my coworkers, and no one knew the woman or dog. I was worried she wouldn't come back, but at the same time, my wish for an office dog had been granted, and Otis was supremely chill. All he did all day was lie around and drool onto his own ears. I just freshened him up every now and then, took him out every couple hours, and he was happy as a clam on a big, cushy dog bed we thankfully had an extra of. He just loved attention from anywhere he could get it. At the end of the day, the woman, thank God, came back. She said, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver. How was he?" And I said, "He was a champ," and was about to say, "But why is he here?" when she said, "That's a relief. Most kennels say he gets anxious around other dogs. I heard you operated at a much higher capacity. I was thrilled to see you had so few clients in the room at one time. So, how much do I owe you?" And that's when I realized she thought we were a dog daycare. Now, I probably should have corrected her, but I loved my day with the office dog, and I did want to get paid for supervising this strange dog all day. I just threw out the number that sounded fair and appropriate. "That'll be $20, I said. She replied, "Really?" in this very high tone, and I couldn't tell if I had overshot or undershot, but she paid me and left. My coworkers were laughing hysterically when they realized what had happened, and we thought it would just be a good story for the future. But the next week, she came back. She said we were so much more affordable and less overcrowded than her other place that she was happy to use us. I was glad for the company, so I just took him. I didn't think there was any way she couldn't have at least some idea we weren't a dog daycare. The whole ordeal was so strange, I just figured, don't question a good thing. I was much younger and dumber then. Not long after, Otis started getting dropped off 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 days a week. I was in heaven. He was such a love, and he made fast friends with the delivery guys and visitors. One day we took our office Christmas card photo, and Otis was over that day, so we included him in a Santa hat. It was pretty great. But it turns out Otis' owner was friends with one of our clients, who I guess happened to have the card out on her table or was kind enough to display it alongside her other holiday cards. Because one day, Otis' owner came in holding the card and walked up to me and said, "I can't even believe I'm asking this, but is that my dog in this photo? This isn't a dog daycare at all. This is just an office, isn't it?" She said it with a note of surprise, as though she was looking around and putting it all together for the first time. No coincidence that this was the first time she wasn't in some crazy rush either. She was like, "Then who are all these other dogs?" And I explained. I was terrified she was going to demand her money back, or worse, take some sort of legal action against us for misrepresenting ourselves as a dog care business, or complain to corporate. Instead, she basically said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" And I explained we just really liked having Otis around. She stopped for a minute and seemed to be thinking and said, "Is that right?" And I said yes, and told her the story of how I was the only one in the office without a dog, so loved the company. She seemed a little flummoxed or hesitant, understandably, because the whole ordeal was so weird. She turned to my coworker and asked if I was telling the whole truth. I don't know why she thought my coworker, also a stranger to her, was any more trustworthy than me. But hey, strange times. Coworker backed me up. So she said,
I wish you'd said something sooner. Could have saved me a lot of embarrassment with my friend back there. All right, I have to get going. See you at 4.
And she left Otis. I couldn't believe it. I said, so he can stay? And she replied,
where else could I find someone to watch him one-on-one all day for $20?
And off she went. Otis stayed my office dog until his family moved away. Luckily, right around the same time, I took a new job. Karen has a total freakout at Walmart. This I will never forget. I used to work at my local Walmart, but I only worked there for 3 months, then quit because I couldn't work the schedule I was on. I worked the graveyard shift. That means I worked from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Fun. I quit because I would sleep all day and be up all night, have no time for family or friends, and I couldn't do that, nor was I able to switch to the day shift since there were no openings for the day shift. After 3 weeks of me quitting, I returned to do some shopping and to return my vest and name tag. I was standing at the customer service, waiting for the general manager to come get the vest and tag. As I was waiting, this woman, aka Karen, walks right up to me and crossed her arms and snarls at me. Me, can I help you? Karen,
yes, I've been waiting for you to stop talking for nearly an hour.
Me, I've been here for 5 minutes. What do you want? Karen,
I need help. I want to buy a TV, but I can't carry it.
Me, I don't work here, lady. The customer service girl holds in a giggle as she tries to calm down the Karen.
Yes, you do. You do work here. I saw you just a month ago working here.
Me, I quit like 3 weeks ago. I no longer work here. If you want help, how about you lose the bad Karen attitude of yours and ask nicely for help before demanding someone? No wonder why people think you're a jerk. We had problems with her multiple times. Karen goes on and on how she's gonna get me fired for this and how she knows the general manager. Me, go ahead, I don't care. I don't work here. I put the tag and vest down on the counter and did my shopping. The general manager comes up and fist bumps me as it was our way of saying hey to each other. He tells me what Karen said and laughed. General manager, I swear, that woman is crazy. I tried to tell her that you don't work here. Me, that's what I told her. Manager, don't worry, if she does anything, she will be banned. I finished up my shopping, and what do you know? Karen lost it on the manager for being so inconsiderate of her being harassed by me. And next thing she knew, she was banned for giving him problems. Karen declares war on my parents for cutting a tree down on their own property. I, 25 male, have been living away from home ever since graduating from college. My parents both retired recently, and last summer they decided to use some of the money they had saved up to finally build their dream retirement home in New Orleans, where they've been living for the past 10 years. I come from a very tight-knit family, so I still talk to my parents every week, and they were so excited when they said they had already picked out the location where they wanted the house built. It was an empty lot in a nice neighborhood where a house had been demolished not long before due to age, and the previous owner, who was pretty wealthy and owned numerous properties around the city, decided that the lot was worth more without the house on it. Anyway, my parents snapped it up as soon as it came on the market, but not long after construction began, they realized that they were building their dream house right next door to a lair of a wild Karen. The trouble started when my parents had to cut down a large oak tree that sat in the front of the lot. It was a real beauty too, one of those big southern live oaks, and although they didn't want to, they knew they had to remove it because it was in the way. No one likes to cut down a big beautiful tree, and believe me, if there was a way to avoid doing it without impeding the construction, my parents would have taken it. So they called a tree removal service, and the tree was soon gone. Well, a few days after the tree had been cut down, my dad was on the property talking to some of the construction guys and making sure that everything was going smoothly. He was going back to his car when he saw a woman in her late 50s walk out of the house next door and head to her mailbox. My dad, let's call him John, is a pretty chill and laid-back guy who likes to be on good terms with everyone. So he walked over and introduced himself. "Hi," he said, holding out his hand. "My name's John, and my wife and I are going to be your neighbors once our house is finished. I just wanted to come over and say hi and introduce myself. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" Karen glanced at the extended hand then looked up at my dad and glared at him.
"My name is none of your business," she snapped. "I'm not going to shake your hand because of lockdown. And even if there was no lockdown, I still wouldn't shake your hand because you people ruined my life when you cut down my tree. I still can't believe how selfish you are. You should both be ashamed of yourselves."
My dad was taken aback by this and pointed out that Karen already had a nice big oak tree in her backyard, but Karen ignored him and stalked back inside her house. She never explained why she thought she was the owner of the tree that had been cut down, not once, and whenever my parents asked about it, she refused to answer. I guess it's just one of those things we'll never know, like what really happened to the lost Roanoke colony or the fate of D.B. Cooper. My parents met some of their other neighbors later that day, including a nice elderly couple who lived in the other house next door to Karen, and when my dad told them what happened, the neighbors said Karen was like that to everyone, and no one in the neighborhood liked her. They also said that Karen had been nasty to them for a long time, and they were in the process of selling their house because they couldn't stand living next to her anymore. Karen soon began living up to her reputation. For months, whenever my parents would visit the house to see how the construction was coming along, she'd find something to complain or confront them about. One time, she said the construction workers were being too loud and threatened to call the police, even though it was the middle of the day. Another time, she said the construction company was using illegal immigrants as cheap labor and threatened to report them and have the whole project shut down. My dad mentioned this to the owner of the company, and the owner sent Karen a formal letter threatening a lawsuit if she tried. I don't know if there were any actual grounds for a lawsuit, but the threat must have worked because the authorities never showed up. Oh, and then there was the time she tried to have my parents' car towed for illegal parking when they parked by the curb of their still unfinished house. The first time my parents knew about this was when the tow truck showed up, but the driver took one look at where my parents' car was parked and told Karen he'd send her a bill for wasting his time if she called him again. I could go on. Karen did everything she could think of to try and interfere. She was absolutely relentless in her crusade to avenge a tree she never even owned. Happily, the house was completed despite her best efforts, and my parents finally moved in not long after the holidays. My mom told me later that she caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they were taking some of their boxes inside. She was concerned that Karen might keep going and try something else, but I guess Karen was too busy wallowing in self-pity over her failure or something because things were actually quiet for a while. But a few weeks ago, things changed. New Orleans has had some really bad weather lately due to the winter storms that are battering much of the southern US right now. And one night, one of those storms was so powerful that it knocked over the tree in Karen's backyard. It missed falling onto her house, but it didn't miss falling onto her shiny new Jaguar and crushing it like a beer can. According to my folks, Karen didn't discover what happened until the following morning. When she came outside and saw the pile of scrap metal that used to be her car, she threw back her head and let out a primal scream like something out of The Exorcist. She had to pay a tree removal service to get rid of the tree, and then she had to pay for a tow truck to get rid of the car too. And then she had a rental car too. Karen put her property up for sale and moved out not long afterward. Everyone in the neighborhood was glad to see her go, and my parents enjoyed watching her drive off into the sunset from the front porch of their amazing new house. Have you ever had a neighbor that you just couldn't stand? If so, what was wrong with them? Please tell us about it in the comments.
Has anyone ever not had a horrible neighbor?
Am I the jerk for wanting to start a relationship with my newly found daughter? Back when I, 51 male, was 16, I met a girl, Anne, in my school, who was new and immigrated to the States. She was absolutely gorgeous and had a very distinctive look. We dated for 5 years, and I had always considered her the love of my life. We went to the same college together and always talked about getting married. Her family wasn't very keen on a white kid like me dating her. One day, she asked me to meet her at a local park and tells me she has to skip town. I asked why and when I would see her. She acted like she couldn't talk long and just said she didn't know, but she was doing this for my safety. That was the last time I saw her. I moved on eventually, but I always thought of her. When Facebook became a thing, I tried to find her, but never did. Eventually, I got married to my wife, 50 female, when we were in our early 40s. She already had 2 kids from a previous marriage who were both preteens at the time. I've provided for them, but they were never warm to me. I don't really begrudge them for that, but I never felt appreciated with everything I sacrificed to provide. They are in their early 20s now. Fast forward to 6 months ago. A new girl, Beth, started at our office, and when I saw her, I was shocked. She was the spitting image of Anne. When I got the chance to talk to her privately, I asked if her mom's name was Anne. She said she honestly didn't know because she was adopted, but she had been hunting for her biological parents for years. She only had one photo to reference. I asked if I could see it. She said she would bring it the next day. I kept this from my wife. I didn't want to say anything if I didn't 100% know, and she's the jealous type and never liked hearing about Anne. The next day, Beth brought the photo, and it was Anne. I told her my story. We both came to the realization that she was old enough to potentially be my daughter. We planned to get a paternity test that week. I was hesitant to tell my wife because I suspected she would forbid it. Well, she's my daughter. 29 years later, and I have a daughter. We were both overjoyed to have found one another, and she asked if we could start building a relationship. I came home that day and told my wife everything. She was livid, but not because I was keeping this from her, like what I thought she would be understandably upset over. My wife thinks I'd choose Anne and Beth over her. She doesn't want me to be in contact with a girl who isn't your child as much as our kids are to you. She feels that by building this relationship, I will see her kids as less of mine. I got mad and told her that her kids are her kids, and I've been happily providing for them, but I am not their father. I am their stepfather, and sometimes I don't even feel they think that. She is forbidding me from this relationship, but I'm ready to die on this hill. Update 1. I want to add that this all came to a head, and now she's seriously using the "it's her or me" ultimatum. Prior to this, we had a happy marriage. She doesn't work, and I provided for the family our whole time together. She has been in hysterics over this, saying Beth just wants to get money out of me. I'm starting to rethink our whole relationship, but I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable by saying I'm absolutely going to make an effort to be in Beth's life from now on as her father. I realized I didn't specify a timeline. Beth started 6-ish months ago, but I hadn't talked to her because of lockdown and whatnot, and truly didn't even really bother looking into her email. It was only until last month, when our offices started to open up, that we got to be in the same physical space, and I saw her in person for me to ask her about her mom. My wife has been livid and unbearable to live with these past couple of weeks. I've tried to talk to her, but she keeps telling me she needs more time. I realize we need a therapist, but her ultimatums are bothering me. Update 2. Wow, I'm blown away by the support and advice I'm receiving. I'm not sure what these award things are, but thank you for the hugs. I just wanted to clear up a few things since I've commented along the way and some people make posts without reading some background. My wife did used to work when I met her. She stopped 5 years ago, but hasn't worked since, and I wish I had an explanation for why or why I hadn't brought up how that bothered me, but it is what it is. I didn't let her know it bugged me. I just didn't want to pressure her. Despite this, she has always been great at housekeeping and does do legwork with errands. Beth has lived in the same city area as myself her whole life. I have lived here my whole life for the most part. We work in a large company downtown. While it is bizarre she got a job in my department, it happened. I don't doubt we would have eventually found each other, seminars, networking events, etc., especially given we are in the same career field. When I say she's the spitting image, I mean she looks exactly like her mom. The only thing she inherited from me seems to be her interest in the legal field. Finally, everyone keeps commenting on how she just is insecure over my long-lost love obsession. I need to be clear. The only reason I brought Anne up was because she's relevant to the story. Early on in my wife and I's relationship, we discussed past relationships and relationship trauma. We commiserated together about what that did for us mentally/emotionally. After a few snarky comments from her about Anne, I said we wouldn't talk about it anymore, and we hadn't for years. I love my wife, but maybe the veil is lifting for me, and I'm realizing that despite her loving me, she might see me more as just financial support. I don't like thinking that because we had amazing times together, and to think that it might have been a facade hurts. Well, who do you agree with? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I really can't wait to read what our audience thinks about this story. Entitled Mom wants me to be free full-time childcare to her kids because I'm at home, working. So, I'm a stay-at-home mom to my 1-year-old. While staying at home, I run the account side of my partner's business. Invoicing, procurement, bookkeeping, etc. Not masses of work, but when the phone rings, I answer it kind of stuff. Partner would be the first to admit he's useless at this. A girl I met whilst pregnant who had her son roughly the same time as my youngest has just gone back to work after having 2 kids. We got pretty close during pregnancy. She's a bit younger than me, but she was helpful because she's been through it before. Father of the kids left her a few months back, and he works full-time. Her mother was supposed to have her son and their 3-year-old daughter from 10 to 2 every day. However, that's all fallen through, and her mom didn't actually quit her job as promised. WhatsApp conversation as follows. Entitled Mom.
My mom's not going to be watching the kids anymore when I go back to work.
Me. Oh no, that's awful. What are you going to do? Have you looked at nurseries?
We can't afford a nursery for 2 kids. I might as well not go to work for what it costs.
Me. I know childcare is ridiculously expensive. Might have more luck with a childminder. Entitled Mom.
Any chance you could watch them for a few hours?
Me. I don't mind helping out now and then if something comes up, but I can't do it every day.
What? But you said you'd always help if we needed.
Yeah, I meant if your mom was sick or busy, not every day.
It's only a few hours. They won't be too much trouble. They will keep your kid occupied.
Me. It's hard enough looking after my own and working. I really can't manage 3.
But you don't work.
I do spend a few hours a day keeping things running for my partner.
Oh, right, that. I don't really see the problem. Why can't you watch them? It's only for a few hours.
It's 4 hours. It also means I can't go anywhere because I can't fit 3 car seats in my car.
Well, the only way I can work is if we have 3 childcare. So someone's going to have to watch them for me.
She did the stupid shruggy arms emoji here too. Me. I'm sorry, but I really can't do it. It wouldn't work.
I really think you're being unfair here. You're not doing anything all day, and you won't even look after my kids for a few hours?
Me. It's not fair of you to expect me to watch your 2 kids, as well as my own, unpaid, 5 days a week, whilst I also have to do all the admin for the business.
Can't you just pay someone to do that?
Me. Why should we pay someone to do something I'm currently doing at 0 cost to us, so that I can watch your kids for free?
Because I need your help.
Funny how you can watch your own child but not mine. Me. Looking after 1 kid is a lot different than 3.
I think you're just being difficult because you don't want to help me.
Etc., etc. Conversation ended. Didn't speak to her, but saw a passive-aggressive Facebook status about fake friends / people who let you down. Moron.
Yeah, Karen knows a lot about fake friends, doesn't she? Considering the fact that she is one.
Never let a Karen pressure you into doing things you don't want to do. How dare I build a tree house in my own yard? Cast. We've got me. We've got my niece, who's 7. We've got entitled Karen, and we've got entitled kid. Story. So, I like to consider myself a pretty handy person. I can build stuff really well. Because niece is back in school full-time and my sister works, niece comes over to my house for a couple of hours after school. Lately, she had been talking about wanting a tree house and how she's really sad she can't have one at her house. They live in an apartment, no backyards. I told her that I had 2 very nice trees in my backyard that we could use. You should have seen her face light up. It was like Christmas for her. I had a bunch of old sliding closet doors from a few years ago when I did some renovations, so I decided to use those for my wood. Recycling, am I right? By the end of the first day, we have a very nice floor and rope ladder up. The second day, right after school, niece is helping me saw some wood planks for a ladder up to the crow's nest when we hear it. Karen.
Ahem.
Me. Can we help you? I should point out, me and my neighbors share a fence, the tall kind. You can't see through it unless you are smushing your face up against it. Karen.
You can't have that.
Me. I'm sorry?
You cannot have a fort.
Me. Ah, and who are you?
I'm Karen, your neighbor's friend.
Me. Nice to meet you. Are you new in the neighborhood?
No, just chatting with your neighbor. I live on the other side of town.
Me. Okay. Is there a particular reason we can't have our treehouse?
Yes. If my son, entitled kid, sees it, he'll want one too.
I'm speechless. Entitled Mom's speechless too. Me. So let me get this straight. We can't have our fort because if your son sees it, he'll want one?
Yes.
When you don't even live here?
Yes.
Me. All right, niece. Why don't you go grab the paint cans in the garage? Niece and I continue with our work, me sawing, niece painting her wood. About 15 minutes later, we hear an ungodly shriek. Entitled kid.
Mine!
This kid can't be older than 8, but he's trying to climb over our fence.
I want a tree house.
Karen then drags him by the arm to her car, shooting me death glares the whole time. I'm not sure how to feel about this. I've never seen this woman before, and I haven't seen her since. So, yeah. Am I the jerk for telling my mother-in-law that her rules for letting us stay in her house are ridiculous? We had a severe plumbing issue occur at our house recently. Insurance will cover it, but the house is virtually uninhabitable until that happens. Our second-story bathtub is currently hanging halfway into the kitchen. My husband's mom graciously extended an invitation for he and I and our 2 kids to sleep over at her house for a week or 2 while repairs are being done. We accepted, and upon arrival, everything was fine. We have had a rocky past, but at this point, his mother and I are usually pretty cordial. After dinner, we went to put our kids to bed in the pull-out couch in their TV room. She stopped us and said,
"If you do that, where will you 2 be sleeping?"
And my husband looked at her confused. In the guest suite? She looked completely shocked.
"Under my roof? Absolutely not. You,"
talking to my husband,
"can have the guest suite, but she sleeps elsewhere."
My husband sort of laughed in amazement and said, "You're going to make my wife sleep in the living room when there's a perfectly good queen-size bed for us both?" His mom all but shuddered. She said,
"Oh my God, why are you even making me think about this? I don't want to think about you in bed with her."
I've been married 8 years. At this point, I just started to smother a smile. I seriously could not help it. Her face had gone red as a tomato, and she looked so genuinely gobsmacked. She turned to me and snapped.
"What's funny here?"
I replied, "I'm sorry." She asked again,
"What's funny? What's so funny to you? Do you have to act like a child about everything?"
So I responded, "This is all just a little ridiculous." She stormed out of the room and went upstairs. She pretty much slammed her bedroom door behind her. That night, my husband gave me the guest suite, and he slept on the pull-out sofa. We left and went to my parents' house the next day, where they had no issue allowing us to share a room. His mother has requested an apology from both of us for disrespecting her home, but my husband hasn't responded to that text, and honestly, we don't even know how. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mother-in-law? Please let us know.
Oh God, what is it with mother-in-laws?
Small business owners are not afraid to yell back at you if you swear at their servers. For context, I work this job during winter and summer breaks between semesters. This happened a few months ago, probably in December. DoorDash driver comes in and I tell him it's going to be about 10 more minutes before his order is ready. That's fine. He sits down at the bar on his phone for a few minutes. Now at this point, we're pretty swamped, and I'm the only server for tables, phones, to-go orders, etc. This means every mistake that wasn't from the kitchen was mine. In my hectic state, I made a mistake and gave his order to the other DoorDash driver who was waiting. I realized about a minute after she walked out the door with it, and of course, I had to do the walk of shame to the bar to tell this guy I messed up, and he would have to wait another 15 minutes or so. We would bump his order to the top of the queue. This guy wasted no time in standing up and pointing his finger right at me, telling me he's been waiting for 10 whole minutes. Boo-hoo, and I should have told him. I don't know what he expected me to do because I literally told him as soon as I realized. He starts to raise his voice. Other customers are looking over, and I'm sure I look pretty stressed because I'm sweating from running around the restaurant, and I get anxious when people are mad at me. Due to the small size of the restaurant, my manager, who has worked with the owner of this restaurant for years, comes out of the kitchen with a no BS look on her face. She was working the grill. Let me just say that I both fear and admire this woman for her tenacity. "What's the problem here, sir?" She looks like she already knows some BS is about to come out of his mouth. The man angrily gestures with his hands while telling her that this girl, me, messed up his order and he's been waiting forever, blah blah blah. And then he swears at her. Big mistake. This 5'1" woman is probably tougher than anyone he's ever met. She swore right back at him. "She already apologized to you. What more do you want?" He tries talking over her and raises his voice again, at which point she motions to the door. "All right, sir, have a good day." This ticked him off, but she just kept repeating it as he yells at her. "You can leave now, sir. We don't want you in here. Just leave. Have a good day." She keeps telling him to have a good day, and he finally storms out. I never saw him again, but it felt so good to have the manager stand up for me like that. Lots of perks working at a local business. No one can report you to corporate, so the manager and owner can tell anyone to buzz off if they're jerks. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great? Well, you can prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. Prove that you're just a bad photogr If you insist. This was over 15 years ago when digital SLRs were first becoming somewhat affordable to anyone who wasn't either wealthy or a professional photographer. When I was in high school, I had been a budding photographer for years already and was working in a small retail photo supply shop. I had a customer who appeared to be in his early 60s come in one Saturday and spend over an hour demoing just about every camera we sold. I honestly looked forward to those customers because it made the time go faster, and I generally enjoyed talking shop with people. Eventually, he settled on one that we both thought would suit his needs, and I rang him up. A few nights later, he comes back. I've already been given a heads up by the store's owner that this guy had called ahead, and he is angry. When the customer arrives, he immediately accuses me of selling him a camera that's either broken or simply not good enough for what he wants to use it for, taking pictures of his grandkids, who, like most kids, are not always sitting perfectly still. It's too slow. It takes the pictures after the kid's already done something. Every photo is blurry, etc. I take him at his word. I have no reason not to, and examine the camera, changing some settings and snapping a few pictures as I go. I genuinely cannot find anything wrong with it at all. As gently as I can, I try to tell him that it may be a combination of using the wrong settings on the camera for what he's trying to photograph, while teaching him the right ones, and maybe a bit of slow reflexes that will develop with practice. Keep in mind that I'm young and terrified of losing my job, so believe me when I say I'm as delicate as I can be with the whole situation. But that was the wrong answer. Apparently, his solution, "Okay, hotshot, let's see you make it work. I'm going to wave my arms back and forth over my head, and I want you to take pictures when they're straight up." He insists this will prove that the camera is too slow and can't take a sharp picture. He hands me the camera and starts doing his best wave your hands in the air like you just don't care right in the store. Snap, snap, snap. I hand the camera back and let him review the photos, each one showing the exact moment he wanted me to photograph, perfectly sharp and in focus. He didn't say another word. He huffed, hastily shoved everything back into his camera bag, and stormed off. "Sorry, sir. Just doing what you asked me to." Pretended to be an employee to shut Karen down. It worked. And pick up a date. Failed. So this happened years ago, but it still makes me smile, so maybe it will make someone else out there smile. One day I walked into my local department store and immediately could hear the insane squawking of an active Karen in the wild. An older woman was in the aisle in my path yelling at an employee who looked like he might be a manager. He was. She was pointing to another man who was quite obviously not an employee, demanding that he be fired. Me, early 20s, female. We've got the shocked manager, we've got the bewildered customer, and the screeching Karen. Karen was pointing her talon-like fingers at the customer, demanding that manager fire him for being rude to her and not helping her. Anytime manager tries to say something, Karen just interrupted and kept berating them both, insisting that customer worked there and demanding he be fired. Now, I've never been accused of being shy. After hearing this exchange for a hot minute, I decided I couldn't resist the impulse to get involved. Plus, they were partially blocking my path. I stepped in between manager and customer, looking at customer and said, "Okay, you're fired. Now get your shopping cart, finish shopping, pay for your items, and get out." At the same time, I had taken him gently by the arm and led him a few feet away from Karen's circle of influence. All three of them got quiet. Nobody knew what to do or say. After a brief pause, customer said to me quietly, I don't work here." I smiled and said softly, "Neither do I." After another brief pause, we both started laughing. Karen was no longer screeching, and manager was just standing there, wondering what the heck was going on. Then I asked customer if he was single. He wasn't, but I always thought that would have been a funny story to tell people if we had hooked up. And that was it. Karen shot me an angry look, but apparently she finally figured it out and skulked off. Not apologizing, of course. And the rest of us, plus a few other customers and employees that had been attracted by the wild Karen's shrill howling, went back to whatever we were doing before. One of them gave me a grin and a discreet thumbs up. Entitled woman demands to be checked out during 2-minute silence. This story takes place on Remembrance Day in the UK several years ago. For those who may not be familiar, Remembrance Day is a nationally observed Memorial Day that takes place on the 11th of November each year, and a big part of the memorial is a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. On this particular Remembrance Day, I was working as a shop assistant. At about 10:55, an announcement was made saying that at 11 a.m. the tills would close for 2 minutes so staff could take part in the silence. When 11 a.m. came, I was stood near the till being operated by a new member of staff who I'll call Elliot. Elliot was 17, very sweet, shy, and non-confrontational, and he had only been working there for a few days at this point. He was about to start serving a customer who we will call Entitled Woman when the announcement came on and the background music stopped playing, marking the beginning of the 2-minute silence. Elliot stopped what he was doing and lowered his head slightly. A lot of people do this, almost like tipping an invisible hat to someone, as did almost everyone else in the vicinity, staff and customers alike, except Entitled Woman. The following conversation is a paraphrase of what was said, as this was several years ago now. Karen.
Excuse me, I'm waiting here.
Elliot, whispering. It's the 2-minute silence, miss.
I am in a rush. Just scan it so I can go.
She was speaking super loudly, not quite shouting, but it sounded so loud in the otherwise silent shop. The other customers were glaring at her, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Elliot, still whispering. I can't. It's the 2-minute silence.
I don't care. I'm in a rush. Scan it now.
Elliot looked almost in pain with how embarrassed and unsure of what to do he was. I quietly walked over and spoke to the woman. Me, whispering. Miss, he will not scan you out until the 2-minute silence is over. You can either wait 1 minute or leave. Karen.
I don't give a crap about your 2-minute silence, whatever. I need to get to work, and you will serve me right now.
The last part of this was barked directly into Elliot's face, and he honestly looked like he was gonna cry. I whispered to Elliot to sign off his till and go take 5 in the break room, and I'd take over. Karen was not happy and shouted at him as he walked away.
No, he's got to serve me. Come back here.
I get into position behind the till and wait for the last 30 or so seconds of the silence to finish. Karen.
For goodness sake, just scan it so I can go.
I just ignored her until the sound went off again to signal the end of the 2 minutes, and the music began to play again. With the brightest customer service smile in place, I silently signed into the till and proceeded to complete the most painfully, glacially slow transaction I've ever done. I picked every item up and turned it all over looking for the barcodes, pretended some didn't scan, so I had to type in the 12-digit codes manually that I keep typing in wrong and having to start over, so clumsy, and scanning things twice, so I'd have to go through the void procedure every few seconds. Karen looked so annoyed. She scolded me for being so slow and so bad at my job. In the end, it took me about 5 minutes to complete the sale and send her on our way. If she hadn't been a complete toilet, she would have been out of there in 2.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.